Chapter 12-13. Resources. Your demonic Dao clone possesses demonic battle chi and has reached the 3rd level of the demonic battle art with my help. This demonic body is perfect for me. The Grand Demonic Lord looked at his demonic Dao clone with burning desire in his eyes. When he saw Zhuowen's demonic Dao clone in the sacrificial pool, he had already secretly planned to possess it. However, due to Emojia's existence outside the pool, the Grand Demonic Lord did not immediately take action. Instead, he quietly helped Zhuowen break through, so that he could help him deal with Emojia. After defeating Emojia, the Grand Demonic Lord had finally revealed his fangs. At the same time, he used the hidden trump card he had hidden in Zhuowen's body. The Buddhist clone had been completely suppressed by the demonic Dao clone. Under the Grand Demonic Lord's orders, the demonic Dao clone used demonic power to imprison the Buddhist clone on the spot. The Grand Demonic Lord extended his right hand and pressed his thumb against the demonic Zhuowen's forehead. The latter did not resist at all. He stared at the Grand Demonic Lord in a daze. "Souls come and go," the Grand Demonic Lord murmured. Soon after, a wisp of black light surged out from his forehead. The black light burned even brighter. In the end, it turned into a black line that shot towards the demonic Dao clone's forehead. The demonic Dao clone did not resist. Like a puppet, he stared blankly at the Grand Demonic Lord. Swoosh! Around 5 seconds later, the black line on the Grand Demonic Lord's forehead completely entered the demonic Zhuowen's body. The Grand Demonic Lord's withered body slowly closed his eyes. He fell to the ground like a pile of mud without making a sound. Clearly, the Grand Demonic Lord had transferred his spirit to the demonic Zhuowen's body. "Now is the time!" A deep voice rang out. Soon after, a wisp of black light shot out from the forehead of Zhuowen's main body. It turned into the figure of Xiaohe. It was Xiaohe. At the same time, Zhuowen, who was imprisoned by the magic power, flicked his finger and summoned the demon-sealing green coffin. Although he couldn't move now, Blackie could. With a wave of Blackie's tiny claws, he grabbed the demon-sealing green coffin and gently patted it on the coffin lid. Suddenly, the demon-sealing green coffin began to grow wildly, expanding to dozens of feet. Then, the coffin lid opened by half, and a suction force directly sucked the demonic avatar in. It just so happened that the Grand Demonic Lord's spirit had entered the demonic Dao clone. Before he could adapt to his new demonic Dao body, he was devoured by the demonic sealing green coffin. Although he wanted to resist the suction force, he was powerless. After a short stalemate, he was devoured by the demonic sealing green coffin. The green coffin closed, and the hall returned to peace. The Grand Demonic Lord had miscalculated this time. He had miscalculated that there was still an existence like Xiaohe in Zhuowen's body. If he had known, he probably would not have tried to possess Zhuowen right in front of Xiaohe. Nor would he have given Xiaohe such an opportunity. Boom! 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 As soon as the demonic sealing green coffin closed, it began to shake violently. Soon after, the Grand Demonic Lord's wild roars rang out. He had managed to possess the demonic Dao clone after so much difficulty, but now, he was being suppressed by the demonic sealing green coffin. How could he not be furious? Unfortunately, the demonic sealing green coffin was a treasure that specialized in restraining demonic creatures. Demonic cultivators possess demonic energy as well. Under the restrictions of the demonic sealing green coffin, most of the demonic energy was unable to unleash much of its power. Although he cursed furiously within the coffin, he was unable to leave. The Grand Demonic Lord is not simple. Fortunately, the demonic body he possessed was only at the first layer of the Demon Emperor. If it was a high-level Demon Emperor, the demonic sealing green coffin might not have been able to suppress him. Xiaohe murmured softly with narrowed eyes. "Xiaohe, it's time for you to remove the restrictions on me, right?" Zhuowen said in a deep voice nearby. Xiaohe shrugged and arrived on Zhuowen's shoulder. With a wave of her little claw, she removed the restrictions on Zhuowen. She looked at Zhuowen, whose face had turned black, and said, "You need a scapegoat to remove the poison from your body." With the restrictions removed, Zhuowen regained his freedom. He slowly stood up and nodded. "Yes. However, the demonic falling powder has a great effect on demonic cultivators. It doesn't have much effect on ordinary people, so there's no need to rush. With that, Zhuowen looked at the demonic ceiling green coffin and said, "How should we deal with the Grand Demonic Lord? The Blood Demon is in the demonic ceiling green coffin. Let the Blood Demon teach the Grand Demonic Lord a lesson first, and let him know how to behave. After a period of time, when the old fellow is exhausted, we can release him. At that time, we can completely erase the old fellow's soul." Xiaohei chuckled. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded. The Blood Demon still existed in the demon ceiling green coffin. This Blood Demon was an ancient sacred-level living being. Its bloodline was extremely powerful. Although its origin was damaged and its strength was greatly reduced, its strength was not something that the demonic Dao doppelganger, whose cultivation was only at the first Heaven Demon Emperor realm, could compare to. Sure enough, after the Grand Demonic Lord vented for a long time in the green coffin, a miserable shriek was emitted. Zhuowen and Xiaohei knew that the Grand Demonic Lord had likely encountered the Blood Demon inside. After Zhuowen sat cross-legged and recuperated for a while, he kept his Buddha avatar. Soon after, he began to size up the surroundings of the large hall. He knew that the great demon sect in the past was very glorious in the panicked great world. It must have left behind many good things. Kid, the sacrificial blood pool contains extremely dense blood power. It will be quite beneficial to the Blood Demon. Throw the demonic ceiling green coffin in, and let it absorb the blood power inside, Xiaohei suddenly said. Zhuowen nodded when he heard this. He beckoned with his right hand, and threw the demonic ceiling green coffin into the blood pool. Immediately, an extremely terrifying blood-red vortex swept out from the center of the blood pool. He could clearly see the blood power in the pool surge into the demonic ceiling green coffin, in the form of a line of blood. "Zhuowen, thank you very much." A heavy voice rang out in Zhuowen's head. Zhuowen knew that it was the Blood Demon's voice. He chuckled softly and said, "Help me teach the Grand Demonic Lord a good lesson. Also, my promise from before still stands. Once I become so powerful that you cannot threaten me, I will set you free. However, the prerequisite is that you cannot do anything to harm me before I set you free. You will even have to listen to my orders. If something like what happened to the Qing Xian Empire happens again, you can forget about ever breaking free from the demonic ceiling green coffin." The Blood Demon fell silent when he heard that. Soon the Blood Demon's voice rang out again. "All right. I was foolish last time. I apologize to you. If you keep your promise, I will not harm you in the future." "That's good. Help me take good care of the Grand Demonic Lord." Zhuowen nodded with a smile. TSK. Don't worry. I will take good care of him." With that, the Grand Demonic Lord's hysterical screams rang out from the demonic ceiling green coffin again. However, Zhuowen was completely indifferent to it. Instead, he began to search the hall. He would not let go of the resources of the Grand Demonic Sect. They were indispensable resources to the Zhuo family. After searching for half a day, Zhuowen failed to discover anything. This made Zhuowen frown slightly. "Kid, go over there and take a look." Xiaohei suddenly pointed at a dilapidated seat at the edge of the hall. The seat was made from piles of bones, but it was currently damaged. It seemed rather ancient. Zhuowen had indeed subconsciously ignored the seat of bones when he searched the hall earlier. Now that Xiaohei had mentioned it, it seemed that the seat of bones was not as simple as it seemed. Zhuowen's eyes were quickly drawn to a skull below the seat when he arrived before it. The main reason why he was drawn to it was because the skull was extremely complete. It did not show any signs of damage. The entire seat of bones was damaged, and only the skull was complete. It was a huge loophole in itself. Zhuowen bent down and tried to pick up the skull with his right hand. Soon after, he discovered that the skull seemed to have taken root in the ground. It could not move at all. What a strange skull. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and did not pick it up. Instead, he carefully examined it for a while. His right hand gently rotated, and the skull, which was originally like an iron hoop, was smoothly rotated. Soon after, the sound of a mechanism activating rang out. "Is it a switch?" A glint shot out from Zhuowen's eyes. Soon after, he clearly saw the white bone seat slowly sink, as the entire large hall began to shake intensely. Soon after, Zhuowen clearly saw the stone wall in front of the large hall begin to slowly collapse, revealing a dark space behind it. There's actually another world. Inside, could it be the resources of the Great Devil Sect ruins? Looking at the scene behind the stone wall, Zhuowen could not help but be stunned on the spot. This was because he discovered that the space was filled with many spiritual stones. In addition to spiritual stones, Zhuowen also saw many weapons, spiritual herbs, jade slips, secret manuals, and many other resources. Stepping into the space, Zhuowen looked at the items in shock. Most of the spiritual treasures were Emperor spiritual treasures. There were more than a dozen Emperor spiritual treasures. One of them was even a mid-level Emperor spiritual treasure. Most of the spiritual herbs were 6th and 7th grade spiritual herbs. Occasionally, there were 8th grade spiritual herbs mixed in. However, the number of such spiritual herbs was extremely small. Found the Great Devil Sect ruins, obtained the truth of the Great Devil Sect's decline, and also found out the whereabouts of the Great Devil Lord. The mission of the second heaven has been completed. An indifferent voice rang out in Zhuowen's mind, causing Zhuowen's body to tremble. He knew that the owner of the voice was the Zonglong Taoist. He did not expect that the mission would be completed by him just like that. I have to return after completing the mission. If I can't take these things with me, wouldn't it be a waste? Zhuowen looked at the many resources in front of him, his heart filled with reluctance. If he took these resources out, it would be beneficial to the Zhuo family and the others. However, the space in his spirit ring was limited. He could not take so many things with him. Chapter 12:14. Free entry. I can actually enter and exit this world freely. Doesn't that mean that I can also bring the others in the Azure Dragon Hall in? Zhuowen's eyes flickered. The flow of time in this world was 365 times faster than the outside world. A year here was a day in the outside world. What the Zhuo family lacked the most now was time. As long as the Zhuo family was given enough time, the Zhuo family would be able to completely grow stronger. Yes, but the others are not qualified to challenge the Guardian. Only if you defeat the Guardian and pass the mission of the third heaven and earth will the others be qualified to enter the third heaven and earth. The cold voice once again sounded in Zhuowen's mind, causing Zhuowen to nod slightly. There's no rush now. Let's deal with the Lord of Supreme Demon first. Since he could bring people in, Zhuowen was not in a hurry to collect the resources in this space. He planned to give all the resources in the Supreme Demon Sect ruins to the Zhuo family and Lu Hantian. He hoped that they could grow stronger as soon as possible, so that they would have more confidence in facing the Blue Dragon Hall in the future. With that, Zhuowen came to the blood pool and sat down silently. The blood power in the blood pool was extremely surging. It would probably take some time for the blood demon to completely absorb it, so Zhuowen needed to wait. Now that my demon body has broken through to the Demon Emperor realm, I wonder when my main body will successfully advance to the Demon Emperor realm? Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Zhuowen frowned slightly. Although his human body cultivation had reached the peak of the Empyrean realm for some time, he still hadn't felt the opportunity to break through. However, he also knew that the more talented a genius was, the more difficult it was to break through to the Demon Emperor realm. If his demon body didn't rely on the help of the Lord of Supreme Demon, it wouldn't be so easy for him to break through to the Demon Emperor realm. Boy, I'm afraid it's more difficult for your main body to break through than for your demon body and Buddha body, Xiaohei said in a deep voice as she appeared on his shoulder. Why? Zhuowen asked curiously. After a moment of silence, Xiaohei said, It's mainly because of me. Once you break through to the Emperor realm, I will recover most of my soul origin under the power of the Emperor Star. At that time, I will bestow you with an extremely powerful dragon skill. However, because my origin energy is far too vigorous, ordinary Emperor Stars are unable to recover my origin energy. If you can't accumulate enough star energy for my origin energy to recover, you won't be able to break through to the Emperor realm. Zhuowen also fell silent. Then he stood up and scolded Xiaohei. You dog, Xiaohei, are you trying to trick me? No wonder I couldn't break through even though I felt like I had accumulated enough. It's all because of you. Xiaohei coughed dryly and quibbled. Boy, you should be content. Once your main body breaks through to the Emperor realm, with my help, your battle prowess will definitely be more terrifying than your demon body and Buddha body. Then what if I can't break through? Zhuowen's gaze was rather unfriendly. Ahem. If you can't break through, you can only blame your lack of talent. It has nothing to do with me. Xiao He shamelessly pushed the blame onto Zhuowen. Seeing Xiao He's shameless behavior, Zhuowen's face darkened. However, he was not truly angry. Instead, he thought to himself that it would be quite difficult for his main body to break through to the Emperor realm because of Xiao He. You can try the Emperor's tomb. Many Emperor realm experts have died there. If your main body wants to break through to the Emperor realm right now, you can only rely on accumulating and absorbing enough star energy. When that time comes, you'll be able to break through to the Emperor realm, Xiao He said in a heavy voice. Zhuowen nodded. Xiao He was right. Since a barrier had appeared out of nowhere in his main body's cultivation, because of Xiao He, if he wanted to break through this barrier, then he could only accumulate sufficient strength. I have to try the Emperor's tomb, but let's deal with the Zhuo family first. Also, there's less than a year left before the cold poison in Mu Qinshua's body disappears. I need to hurry to the Jiaxin Academy before the 3 years are up. Zhuowen frowned. Xiao He nodded and continued. Let's deal with the Lord of the Grand Demons first. After a while, the Lord of the Grand Demons should be exhausted by the Blood Demon in the demon-sealing green coffin. When that happens, I'll take the opportunity to enter his body and grab his soul. Zhuowen had no objections to that. Xiao He's attainments and spirits were extremely high. Even if the Lord of the Grand Demons had been a high-level demon emperor when he was alive, his soul was probably not a match for Xiao He. Let's wait first. Zhuowen quietly sat down as he spoke. He waited for the demon-sealing green coffin to finish absorbing the power of blood. A month slowly passed. The pool of blood in the hall had already dried up a little. A 10-foot large blood coffin stood quietly at the bottom of the pool. This blood coffin was the demon-sealing green coffin. Due to the blood demon, the demon-sealing green coffin's surface had already been covered by a blood-red color, making it look extremely strange. Bang! The blood coffin suddenly trembled. Immediately, it shot out and smashed into the ground a short distance away from Zhuowen. The terrifying force caused the entire hall to tremble. Creak! A hole slowly opened in the blood coffin. Immediately, an extremely miserable figure landed on the ground from the blood coffin. This figure was the demonic body that the Lord of the Grand Demons had possessed. However, the Lord of the Grand Demons' current condition was clearly not very good. His face was extremely pale, and his body twitched violently as if he was having a seizure. Swoosh! The moment the demonic body was released, Xiao He rushed out and directly entered the spot between the demonic body's brows. Around 10 breaths' time, Xiao He once again rushed out from between the demonic body's brows. However, her little claws were holding a small black person. This small person's face was exactly the same as the Lord of the Grand Demons. Clearly, this was the spirit of the Grand Demons. After the spirit of the Grand Demons was extracted, Zhuowen immediately regained control over the demonic body. A thought passed through his mind, and the demonic body slowly stood up. It silently stood behind Zhuowen. What method did the Lord of the Grand Demons use to so easily seize control of my demonic body? Zhuowen muttered to himself. His gaze landed on the spirit of the Grand Demons. Although he seemed to be talking to himself, he was actually asking the Lord of the Grand Demons. The spirit of the Grand Demons trembled. He had never thought that he would end up like this. In particular, Xiao He's spirit was so powerful that he felt like it was as vast as an ocean. His spirit was like an ant before Xiao He, unable to withstand a single blow. If I tell you, will you let my soul live? Grand Demon Lord asked with a hopeful look in his eyes. Zhuowen sneered. He extended a finger with his right hand, and a sliver of the 9 flames karmic fire surged out. It landed on the Grand Demon's body, immediately burning the Grand Demon's right arm to ashes. Soon after, the spirit of the Grand Demons let out a miserable shriek. Do you still have the right to negotiate with me right now? If you don't want to die right away, then hurry up and tell me, Zhuowen said indifferently. The Grand Demons endured the pain of his spirit being burned. As a result, He gritted his teeth and growled. The reason why I placed the 2 statues in the Bountiful Treasures Pavilion back then was actually as a precaution. I tampered with the Grand Demonic Battle Chi in there. If someone absorbs the Grand Demonic Battle Chi, I'll gain control over that person's body. That's why I was able to take over your body so easily. Old fox, you sure have a lot of plans. Zhuowen was startled. He originally thought that the 2 statues in the Bountiful Treasures Pavilion were treasures, but he never thought that they would be time bombs. He had almost ended up helping the Grand Demons. The Grand Demons hurriedly smiled fawningly. Zhuowen, I'm actually very useful to you. I created the Grand Demonic Battle method that you cultivate, so I can help you reach a high level of it quickly. That way, you'll be able to break through much faster. Zhuowen shook his head with a bitter smile. Once bitten, you'll always be afraid of ropes. It's not very likely that I'll trust you. With that, Zhuowen shot a meaningful glance at Xiaohe. Xiaohe chuckled. The soul of a high-class emperor is quite a good tonic. The Grand Demon's face finally changed drastically when he heard that. He could imagine what Xiaohe was going to do next, so he hurriedly begged for mercy. Unfortunately, Xiaohe did not give him any chance to beg for mercy. She suddenly opened her mouth and swallowed the Grand Demon's soul. At the same time, she smacked her lips and muttered that it didn't taste very good. I'll make a trip out of the second world first. I'll bring grandfather, brother Hantian, and the others in first. With a thought, Zhuowen slowly vanished from the hall after dealing with the Grand Demons. When he opened his eyes, he appeared in the square of the Azure Dragon Hall once more. Zhuo Xiangding, Lu Hantian, and many others were currently gathered around the square. Everyone stared at Zhuowen in a daze. They remembered that Zhuowen had only vanished recently, so why had he returned now? Zhuowen was not surprised. The flow of time in the second world was vastly different from the outside world. He had only stayed in there for a little over a month, so only a little over 2 hours had passed outside. Zhuowen, why have you come out so quickly? Zhuo Xiangding walked up and asked in confusion. Lu Hantian, Elder Shiwan, Zhuo Xiangding, Luoxing, and Qing Lian gathered around Zhuowen as well. Their eyes were filled with doubt. Clearly, they shared the same thoughts as Zhuo Xiangding. Zhuowen was surprised. Afterwards, he explained the flow of time in the second world to them. Only then did everyone understand. At the same time, when Zhuowen told them that he could bring people in and out of the second world freely, they all erupted into an uproar. What a cultivator needed the most for cultivation was time. As long as you had enough time, coupled with certain opportunities, it was only a matter of time before you broke through the shackles. No matter which force it was, if they wanted to have a deep foundation, they would need a lot of time to accumulate. Chapter 12:15. Ryaka's Zhuowen looked at the people around him, including the members of the Zhuo family and the core members of the Celestial Empire that Lu Hantian had brought. There were only 200 to 300 people in total. Such a number was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot for a large force. It might not even be enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Thinking of this, Zhuowen slowly floated in the air and looked down at the crowd. His loud voice rang out. Everyone is now in the same boat. With this Azure Dragon Palace, you will obtain endless benefits. However, you will have to pay a certain price and contribute accordingly. Zhuo Xiangding led the members of the Zhuo family and looked up at Zhuowen quietly. Their eyes were full of respect. Zhuowen was the pride of the Zhuo family. They naturally followed Zhuowen's lead. Whatever Zhuowen said they would do. However, Zhuowen's words were not for the Zhuo family, but for the people of the Celestial Empire. Zhuowen, the Azure Dragon Palace is indeed amazing. If you have any requests, just say it. I, Lu Hantian, will be the first to listen to you. Lu Hantian stepped forward and nodded at Zhuowen. This old man is already so old. I can't make the decision myself. Listening to Zhuo Xiaoyu is also a good choice. Elder Shiwan smiled and came to Lu Hantian's side. The 5 servants led by Zi Yang, as well as Lve Tao, Qing Lian, Luo Xing, Miao Lu, and the others all stood out. They stared at the figure in the sky with determined gazes. Although they did not say anything, their attitudes had already made their intentions clear. Since Lu Hantian, and the other higher-ups had expressed their opinions, the others had no objections. They all looked at Zhuowen and waited for Zhuowen to continue. I want to establish a force called Ryuka. Are you willing to join this force called Ryuka? Zhuowen said slowly. Although his voice was calm, there was a hint of excitement in his tone. It was obvious that Zhuowen's mood was not as calm as he looked on the surface. Ryuka. As soon as these words came out, many people in the Celestial Empire were stunned. They quickly thought of the super force Ryuka that dominated the entire eastern continent 10,000 years ago. Back then, Zhuowen was chased by Emperor Qing. It seemed that Zhuowen was a Ryuka's descendant. Zhuowen, and even the entire Zhuo family was a clan descendant of the Ryuka. I'm willing. Zhuo Xiangding took the lead and shouted. His eyes were filled with excitement. They were Ryuka's descendants, and had changed their appearances for countless years. Now they could finally restore their own surname. Of course, now was not the time to truly stand tall in the eastern continent and bring the Ryuka to greater heights. However, Zhuowen had made a good start. Lu Hantian's eyes were as calm as water. He was the first to know that Zhuowen was a Ryuka's descendant. Therefore, when Zhuowen proposed to establish a Ryuka force today, he was not surprised at all. I, Lu Hantian, am willing to join. Lu Hantian laughed. As soon as Lu Hantian spoke, Elder Shiwan, Miao Lu, Lu Yitao, Luo Xing, Qing Lian, and the others all spoke in agreement. The eyes of the people from the Celestial Dynasty flickered, and they all agreed to join the Long family. When Zhuowen said that the Azure Dragon Hall was a divine spirit treasure, they knew that following Zhuowen would have a limitless future. A saint-level spiritual treasure was enough to cultivate an extremely terrifying force. In the mysterious Nine Serenities realm in the eastern continent, those powerful forces all had their own saint-level spiritual treasures. Therefore, the forces in the Nine Serenities realm were generally much stronger than those in the outside world. And the Nine Serenities realm was known as a paradise for experts. Floating in the air, looking at the responses of the people below, he smiled and nodded. His heart was filled with pride as he said loudly, Ryuka will rise in the Azure Dragon Hall. In the future, its name will spread throughout the eastern continent, and even the heavenly armor continent. Now, I will bring you to the second heaven. As he spoke, Zhuowen waved his sleeve. Suddenly, the entire square was filled with a mighty force of space, enveloping everyone. Then, everyone disappeared from the square. When everyone came back to their senses, they found that they had arrived at a large hall. However, what made everyone frown was that the hall was filled with corpses. In the center of the hall, there was a dried-up pool of blood. It was like a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Some of the women in the crowd trembled in fear when they saw this scene. Their beautiful faces were incomparably pale. This scene was too bloody. Anyone who saw it would feel a little uncomfortable. Looking at the doubts in everyone's eyes, Zhuowen briefly explained some of the things that happened when they entered the panicked world. Only then did everyone feel relieved. At the same time, they were quite afraid of the Lord of Extreme Demon that Zhuowen mentioned. Fortunately, Zhuowen had already dealt with him. That space contains all the resources of the Extreme Demon sect. It can be used to develop our Ryuka. In the future, our Ryuka will take root in this panicked world. When our Ryuka has a certain foundation, we will be able to reappear in the eastern continent. The Blue Dragon Hall will not be able to do anything to us. Zhuowen pointed at the space in front of them and said in a clear voice. Following the direction that Zhuowen pointed at, everyone saw that there were many resources piled up in that space. There were spirit stones, spirit herbs, spirit treasures, cultivation method secret books, and so on. However, most of the cultivation method secret books in the Extreme Demon sect were related to devil cultivation. Other types of cultivation method secret books were relatively rare. Big Brother Hantian, Grandfather, and Elder Shiwan. In the future, the three of you will be the leaders of the Ryuka. These Ryuka people will all be under your control. Also, you should distribute these resources. It would be best if you do it fairly. Zhuowen suddenly said to Lu Hantian, Zhuo Xiangding, and Elder Shiwan. The panicked world is very large. We can first establish a base of Ryuka in the panicked world, and absorb new blood in this world, to strengthen the power and influence of the Ryuka. The three of them nodded. Zhuowen's idea was not bad. This panicked world was an isolated world, created by the Zonglong Taoist, with his supreme saint power. It was undoubtedly the safest place to develop the Ryuka. At least, they did not need to be remembered by the Blue Dragon Hall, and have an accident. After a little arrangement of everyone's matters, Lu Hantian, Zhuo Xiangding, and Elder Shiwan entered the space, and began to distribute the resources inside. If there were any surplus, they planned to keep it first and use it later. At the same time, they were also preparing to set up some reward systems. Good things must be given to warriors who have contributed to the Ryuka, or to geniuses with great talent. Of course, these were all in the future. After all, the Ryuka had not been established yet. In about a month's time, the resources of the extreme demon sect had been distributed fairly under the arrangements of Lu Hantian, Zhuo Xiangding, and Elder Shiwan. Many people in the Ryuka did not have any objections to the arrangements made by the three of them. Of course, the extreme demon sect was an extremely large force after all. The resources contained in it could not be all plundered by more than 200 people in the Ryuka. Most of the resources were already in the hands of the Ryuka higher-ups, and would be used as the foundation for the continued development of the Ryuka in the future. Zhuowen, we plan to take the Ryuka people to the 7 prefectures, and develop our Ryuka there. On this day, Lu Hantian came in front of Zhuowen and said to Zhuowen. Zhuowen was sitting cross-legged on the blood coffin. When he heard Lu Hantian's words, he slowly opened his eyes and said, "If we want to develop the Ryuka, we should go to the 7 prefectures. Brother Hantian, you can take the Ryuka people there. Here is a map of the 7 prefectures, and the Dreamy Cloud Swampland. You can go to the Great Song Prefecture to develop your forces. I have a more detailed map there." After saying that, Zhuowen flicked his finger, and handed a jade slip to Lu Hantian. The latter took the jade slip and looked at Zhuowen in surprise. "Zhuowen, don't you plan to go with us?" Zhuowen shook his head and said, "No. There are many devil cultivation scriptures in the Great Devil Sect ruins. I plan to comprehend all of them. Perhaps it will be of great benefit to the promotion of my Devil Dao avatar." Upon hearing this, Lu Hantian nodded his head, and did not try to persuade Zhuowen any further. At this moment, Zhuowen gave him an extremely powerful feeling, especially that demonic avatar. Just the demonic aura emanating from its body caused Lu Hantian to feel a little apprehensive. He did not doubt that if he were to fight against this demonic avatar, he would not be able to withstand even one blow. Thinking back to the little guy who was only at the Ultimate Emperor stage back then, and now he had reached a level that even he had to look up to, Lu Hantian couldn't help but sigh in his heart. However, his eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Although Zhuowen's talent was a little abnormal, Lu Hantian wasn't weak either. Especially with the help of the powerful soul treasure of the Azure Dragon Hall, Lu Hantian believed that his cultivation would be able to advance by leaps and bounds. "Zhuowen, after we confirm the address of Ryuka, I will personally make a trip to the Dreamcloud Swampland, and give you the address of Ryuka. If you come out of seclusion, you can come to Ryuka to take a look," Lu Hantian said to Zhuowen again. Soon after, he, Zhuo Xiangding and Elder Shiwan began to arrange for people to leave the Great Devil Sect ruins and head to the 7 prefectures. "I want to accompany Big Brother Zhuo here," a clear voice sounded out. Following which, Miao Lu walked briskly to Zhuowen's side and quietly looked at the calm expression on Zhuowen's face. Looking at the stubborn expression on Miao Lu's face, Lu Hantian felt a little helpless. He could only let her be, and did not stop her. Although Miao Lu's cultivation was low, Zhuowen's strength was extremely strong, and it was more than enough to protect Miao Lu. Luo Xing and Qing Lian looked at each other, and actually left the group. They came to a place not far from Zhuowen, and quietly sat cross-legged in the hall. Obviously, the 2 women were the same as Miao Lu. They also planned to stay and accompany Zhuowen. This kid really has good luck with women. Lu Hantian was stunned. He immediately scratched his head, and said with a little jealousy. Elder Shiwan, who was standing at the side, shook his head and said, I say, old Han, you should dress yourself up neatly and wash your face. Your luck with women will also be good. Lu Hantian stared and groaned. I say, Shiwan, what do you mean? I am already handsome enough. If I deliberately dress up, there will be countless beauties throwing themselves at me. That will be troublesome. It is better to be like this now, low-key. Chapter 12:16. Cunning Lu Hantian let everyone out of the Grand Demon statue, very quickly according to the map Zhuowen had given them. Over 200 people headed towards the Grand Song Prefecture of the 7 prefectures, in a mighty fashion. They planned to develop a base there. Zhuowen remained seated in the hall. Over the past month, Lu Hantian had already cleaned up the bloody hall. Although the light was a bit dim, it was still a lot cleaner and tidier. At this moment, Zhuowen's main body slowly opened his eyes, and he was rather speechless as he looked at Qing Lian and Luo Xing, who sat cross-legged nearby, and Miao Lu, who stood before him with a pair of watery eyes. Why are the 3 of you in the hall? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Brother Zhua. I just want to stay with you. I feel safe with you. Miao Lv replied without any hesitation. However, as if she had realized that there was some ambiguity in her words, Miao Lv covered her mouth with her right hand. Like a child who had done something wrong, she no longer dared to say anything else. Qing Lian and Luo Xing looked at each other and smiled resplendently. We have the same thoughts as Miao Lv. Zhuowen shrugged when he heard the same answer from the 3 women. He felt somewhat helpless. Luo Xing and Clear Lotus had made good progress in their cultivation. They had already reached the initial stage of the Heavenly Venerate realm. However, Miao Lv's cultivation was a little weak. She was only at the Ultimate Emperor realm. However, Miao Lv was the youngest. Her talent was already pretty good for reaching the Ultimate Emperor realm at such a young age. Brother Zhua, how long do you plan on staying here? Miao Lv seemed to have forgotten the awkwardness from before and asked again. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. With a wave of his sleeve, he summoned his demonic and Buddhist clones. After having the 2 clones cultivate in another corner of the hall, Zhuowen's eyes flickered. It might take a year or 2. I've been poisoned by the Lord of the Grand Demon's Demonfall powder. Although it doesn't pose much of an obstruction to my main body, it's still a poison, so I'll need some time to expel it. Miao Lv, Qing Lian, and Luo Xing were not surprised that Zhuowen had 2 clones. Zhuowen had already told them about his clones. Then we'll wait for you to expel the Demonfall powder from your main body, Luo Xing said seriously. Zhuowen nodded. My demonic body's cultivation has already reached the level of a demon emperor. If the 3 of you have any questions about cultivation, feel free to ask my demonic body. It will answer some of your questions about the way of the martial way. With that, Zhuowen slowly closed his eyes and began to expel the Demonfall powder that the Grand Demon Lord had planted in him. Although the Grand Demon Lord had said that there was no cure for the Demonfall powder, Zhuowen discovered that the celestial force he had fused with an immortal stone was actually able to expel the poison from the Demonfall powder. However, the immortal stone could only be used once a day, and there was an extremely large amount of Demonfall powder in his body. The Lord of the Grand Demon had accumulated the poison in his body over the past century. It was extremely terrifying, so Zhuowen estimated that it would take him a year or 2. Fortunately, the flow of time in the panicked Great World was completely different from the outside world. A year here was only a day in the outside world, so he had plenty of time and was not in a hurry to leave the panicked Great World. Moreover, the Great Demon sect had so many demonic cultivation scriptures, which were extremely beneficial to his demonic body. Zhuowen believed that if he stayed here for a few years, his demonic body might be able to break through the shackles and reach the level of a 2nd or even 3rd layer demon emperor. Its power would become extremely terrifying. Time slowly passed. In the hall, Zhuowen's main body was basically using celestial force to expel the demonic qi in his body. Moreover, he discovered that as he continued to use the immortal stone, the formation in the immortal stone seemed to be perfecting itself. The time it could continue to fuse with celestial force was also constantly increasing. After this discovery, Zhuowen could be said to be wild with joy. He worked even harder to use the immortal stone to expel the demon fall powder poison. After a year passed, Zhuowen's main body slowly opened his eyes, and his gaze erupted with a dazzling bright light. Because he noticed that after expelling the poison for a year, the time the immortal stone could continue fusing with immortal energy could actually reach 10 times a day. What was even more surprising to him was that the strange formation within the immortal stone actually possessed the ability to repair itself. Previously, the self-repair ability was not very obvious, so Zhuowen did not notice it. However, due to the stimulation of the demon fall powder, the self-repair ability of the formation in the immortal stone had obviously sped up a lot, which made Zhuowen pleasantly surprised. Zhuowen knew that since the formation in the immortal stone had the ability to self-repair, it was only a matter of time before the formation completely recovered. However, whether it would take a long time or a short time was not something Zhuowen could guess. After the demon fall powder was completely expelled, Zhuowen's complexion became much better. He slowly stood up and stretched. Luo Xing, Qing Lian, and Miao Lv also saw Zhuowen stand up and stood up one after another. Luo Xing came before Zhuowen and said, "Half a year ago, Senior Hantian came here once and gave me the address of Ryuka." With that, Luo Xing flicked her finger and handed a jade slip to Zhuowen. Clearly, the jade slip recorded the address of Ryuka. After flipping through it, Zhuowen discovered that Lu Hantian had established Ryuka's forces in Heaven's Vault City, in the northwest corner of the Great Song Prefecture region. It was said that half a year ago, they had already developed Ryuka to such an extent that it might have already become the strongest force in Heaven's Vault City. Let's go take a look at Heaven's Vault City. With a wave of his sleeve, Zhuowen withdrew his Buddhist and demonic clones into his body. Soon after, he led the 3 women out of the ruins of the extreme demon sect. The surroundings of the dreamy cloud swampland were still filled with mist. The statue of the extreme demon lord stood silently in the center of the swampland. Wrapped in mist, it seemed so mysterious and distant. Xiaohei, you've woken up. As soon as they walked out of the statue of the extreme demon lord, Zhuowen was surprised to discover that Xiaohei, who had remained motionless in his sea of consciousness, had actually woken up. He remembered that a year ago, Xiaohei had fallen into a deep slumber after devouring the soul of the extreme demon lord. She planned to completely digest the soul of the extreme demon lord. Kid, are you planning to leave the statue?" Xiaohei suddenly asked in surprise. Zhuowen nodded. Soon after, he briefly recounted the events that had occurred over the past year. Soon after, he discovered that Xiaohei had descended into silence. After a while, Xiaohei once again opened its mouth and said, "Brat, after this dragon lord absorbed the soul of this grand fiend lord, I discovered something." What is it?" Zhuowen asked in confusion. The extreme demon lord still had a trick up his sleeve. After all, he's a high-level demon emperor. His own essence is still extremely powerful. Although the extreme demon lord's demonic power has mostly been exhausted because of the demon fall powder, his own essence is still. Xiaohei's voice suddenly came to an abrupt halt. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said in shock, "You're saying that the extreme demon lord's essence is still hidden somewhere?" Actually, after the extreme demon lord transferred all the demon fall powder to your body, there was no need for him to take over your body. However, he chose to do so. Don't you find it strange?" Xiaohei said in a deep voice. Zhuowen's eyes were a little dark when he heard this. He nodded and was silent for a moment. Then, he waved his sleeve and took out a huge ship. This ship was a flying soul treasure that Zhuowen had found in the ruins of the extreme demon sect. This ship was called the Black Cloud Sail. There was a black cloud-like sail on its main mast. When it was unfurled, it was like a dark cloud that covered the sky. That was why it was called the Black Cloud Sail. Let's take this Black Cloud Sail to Firmament City in the Great Songfu region, Zhuowen said with a smile. Luo Xing and the other 2 girls nodded. After the 4 of them sat on the Black Cloud Sail, a strange black cloud spread out around the Black Cloud Sail. With a whoosh, it turned into a black bolt of lightning and shot toward the periphery of the dreamy cloud swampland at an extremely fast speed. Not long after the black cloud sail left, a figure surrounded by surging demonic aura appeared at the forehead of the statue of the extreme demon lord. The figure only revealed a pair of black demonic eyes, which were filled with monstrous hatred. That damn Zhuan! I never thought that there would be such a terrifying existence in his body. He actually managed to devour the soul of my body so easily, causing me to be heavily injured. I will not let this matter rest. The figure shrouded in black gas hatefully glanced at He Yunfan, who was leaving in the distance, then took a step forward. Demonic chi surged out of his body as he charged in the opposite direction. However, as soon as he shot off, a terrifying force shot towards him. Thump, thump, thump. The figure was caught off guard and was knocked back by the force. He stared at the figure that had suddenly appeared in front of him in shock and cried out, You really are a sly old fox. You actually have a clone. No wonder you gave up on your body and possess my weak demonic body. So you have clones as well." At this moment, demonic Dao Zhuowen was shrouded in demonic chi. He stood in the air and looked down at the Grand Demon Lord's clone. The Grand Demon Lord's clone wasn't very powerful. It was only at the first level of Emperor Realm. Due to the damage to its soul, its battle prowess was probably weaker than ordinary first-level emperors. However, it possessed an extremely powerful source. It was the source of the Grand Demon Lord's high-level Demon Emperor. It was a pity that the Extreme Demon Lord's soul was just too heavily damaged. Although he possessed the origin energy of a high-class Demon Emperor, he was unable to immediately use it and convert it into his own strength. The Extreme Demon Lord's clone probably planned on taking the origin energy with him and hiding somewhere to cultivate. He would only emerge once his cultivation recovered. At that time, he would probably come for revenge against the 7 prefectures in Ryuka. The Extreme Demon Lord's clone was a scourge. Zhuowen could not allow him to live. Chapter 12:17. Black Cloud Sail. However, the Grand Demon Lord did not flee for long before a golden light surged over. Subsequently, the Grand Demon Lord backed away with a sunken expression. Behind him, the Buddhist Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. The light wall behind his head shone with a dazzling Buddhist light. "Grand Demon Lord, you won't be able to escape today." The demonic Zhuowen took a step forward and pressed his right hand down. Surging Grand Demon battle chi turned into endless demonic clouds that crushed down. The Grand Demon Lord roared. He grabbed with his right hand, and a monstrous demonic claw appeared in an attempt to break through the demonic clouds. Bang! Unfortunately, the Grand Demon Lord's demonic claw was nowhere near its peak. It only lasted for a while in the demonic clouds before collapsing. Ugh! The Grand Demon Lord spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backwards. By the time he returned to his senses, Zhuowen had already arrived in front of him. Zhuowen extended his right hand and grabbed the Grand Demon Lord's neck. His cold eyes stared at the Grand Demon Lord, causing his heart to tremble. "Let me live. I'm willing to become your servant." The Grand Demon Lord screamed at the top of his lungs. After all, his throat was in Zhuowen's hand, so his voice was naturally a little abnormal. He clearly understood that he was no match for Zhuowen with his current strength. As a matter of fact, given Zhuowen's hatred for him, it was very likely that Zhuowen would kill him. Hence, he immediately begged for mercy, hoping that Zhuowen would spare his life. "Oh, you're willing to become my servant?" Zhuowen was a little surprised by the Grand Demon Lord's tact, and asked in surprise. The Grand Demon Lord replied bitterly, "Do you think I have any other choice? If I don't yield, only death awaits me." Zhuowen nodded when he heard this. He grabbed the Grand Demon Lord's neck with his right hand, and formed a complicated seal with his left hand. At the same time, Zhuowen pulled out a strand of mental energy from his Naiwan palace. It turned into a small golden snake, and entered the Grand Demon Lord's forehead, forming a golden imprint. "This is a slave imprint. Since I have planted a slave imprint in you, you are my slave. Your life is under my control," Zhuowen said calmly. This slave seal was a secret technique in the Myriad Evolution scripture. It was a secret technique that specialized in enslaving other martial artists. It was even more reliable than the method Zhuowen had used to control Xiang and the other 4. The reason why Zhuowen hadn't used it back then was because he hadn't cultivated the myriad evolution scripture to the point where he could extract mental strength to control other martial artists. The Grand Demon Lord naturally sensed the terrifyingly powerful seal on his forehead, and a sliver of sorrow appeared in his eyes. He knew that once Zhuowen planted a slave imprint in him, he would become Zhuowen's servant for the rest of his life. However, it was fortunate that he could escape death. After planting the slave imprint, Zhuowen spread out his hands and said, "Give me your source energy." The Grand Demon Lord's face stiffened. He sighed softly and waved his sleeve. Immediately, the surging demonic aura around him gathered on his right hand. In the end, it turned into a black ball in his right palm. Dense demonic aura lingered on the surface of the black ball. Zhuowen immediately sensed the Grand Demon Battle Qi in his body spin at a crazy speed after taking the black ball from the Grand Demon Lord. It seemed to crave the black ball in his hand. This black ball actually contains such dense demonic origin. Zhuowen muttered with narrowed eyes as he sensed the wild Grand Demon Battle Qi in his body. Obviously, this is the origin of a high-ranked demon emperor. How can it not be dense? Xiao Hei's disdainful voice rang out in his head. Zhuowen shrugged. His gaze landed on the Grand Demon Lord again. He said, "You should know how to use this demonic origin, right?" The Grand Demon Lord nodded and respectfully said, "This old servant naturally knows. Master possesses the Grand Demon Battle Art and the Grand Demon Battle Qi in his body. Absorbing this demonic origin is most suitable. However, this is the origin of a high-ranked demon emperor after all. Master is only a first-level demon emperor right now, so this old servant believes that Master should not be in a hurry to absorb it all. Instead, absorb a portion of it. Once you cultivate the Grand Demon Battle Art to its peak and absorb all of it, you might be able to directly break through to the high-ranked demon emperor." Hearing the Grand Demon Lord's suggestion, Zhuowen asked somewhat dubiously, "Are you sure?" The Grand Demon Lord lowered his head and said, "Don't worry, Master. This old servant wouldn't dare deceive Master. The Grand Demon Battle Art has a total of 18 layers. Every 3 layers allows one to advance to the Demon Emperor realm. Originally, if Master relied on himself to cultivate, it would take a very long time. However, with this old servant's demonic origin, it should be relatively easy to cultivate the Grand Demon Battle Art to its peak. If Master absorbs the Grand Demon Battle Art after reaching its peak, the effects will be the greatest. Kid, this old man probably isn't lying to you. After all, this is the origin of a high-ranked demon emperor. It's a bit of a waste for you to absorb it at such a low cultivation. Once you reach the 6th layer of the demon emperor realm, the effects will probably be maximized," Xiao Hei said in agreement. Zhuowen nodded when he heard that. He said, "I'll trust you this once. Since you've become my servant, you should serve me well. If I can see your loyalty, I will help you recover to your peak." The Grand Demon Lord was stunned. Soon after, excitement appeared in his eyes. He asked, "Master, are you serious?" "Of course I am." Zhuowen nodded. With a wave of his sleeve, he disappeared with the Grand Demon Lord and Buddhist Zhuowen. Swoosh! A ship shrouded in black clouds passed through the air. Through the gaps in the clouds, 4 figures could be seen standing on the deck. They were a man and 3 women. The 4 of them were Zhuowen, Miao Lu, Qing Lian and Luo Xing. Swoosh! With the sound of something breaking through the air, 3 figures charged onto the deck from the black clouds. The crisp sound of their feet landing on the deck immediately alerted Miao Lv, Qing Lian, and Luo Xing. However, Zhuowen slowly turned around with his hands behind his back. Looking at the 3 figures, a smile appeared on his face. When Miao Lv and the others saw that the newcomers were Zhuowen's 2 clones, they relaxed their vigilance. The 3 women's beautiful eyes curiously landed on the stooped Grand Demon Lord beside Zhuowen. "Brother Zhua, who's this old man?" Miao Lu asked out of curiosity. "He's my servant Mo Kuei," Zhuowen said with a smile. He had already said before that the Grand Demon Lord was dead, so the 3 of them probably would not believe him if he said the old man was the Grand Demon Lord. As a result, Zhuowen could not be bothered to explain. He directly named the Grand Demon Lord Mo Kuei and made him his servant in the future. The three women looked at each other. Although they were puzzled, they did not raise any more questions. After all, this was Zhuowen's private matter. It was not convenient for them to get to the bottom of it. The black cloud sail was extremely fast. It crossed the void like a black bolt of lightning, and soon arrived at the Great Song Prefecture's Sky City. The Sky City was not very far from the Great Song Prefecture's Great Song City. Ever since the Great Demon Sect ruins appeared, countless cultivators from the 7 prefectures had not returned. A year had passed, and the other cultivators from the 7 prefectures had all kinds of guesses. The most reliable guess was that the Grand Demon Lord was hiding in the Great Demon Sect ruins. So all the cultivators from the 7 prefectures who went there were wiped out. The Great Song Prefecture's master, Songjie, and countless elite cultivators from the Great Song Prefecture were all buried in the Great Demon Sect ruins. In an instant, the Great Song Prefecture's Great Song Prefecture declined. The other forces in the Great Song Prefecture were somewhat restless, wanting to replace the Great Song Prefecture. However, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Although all the elite cultivators of the Great Song Prefecture, including Songjie, were buried in the Great Demon Sect ruins, the foundation of the Great Song Prefecture still existed. It was really difficult for ordinary forces to replace it. When the black cloud sail landed, it attracted the attention of many cultivators in the Sky City. Zhuowen's group of 5 walked down the black cloud sail and went straight to the core of the Sky City. There stood a rather tall mansion. The 2 words Ryuka were engraved on the plaque above the mansion. Zhuowen! A shout immediately attracted the attention of Zhuowen's group of 5. Zhuowen followed the voice and immediately saw LV Tao, leading a group of people towards them. Brother LV, Zhuowen said with a smile, I didn't expect you to stay there for so long. Come with me to Ryuka first. Senior Hantian and Elder Shiwan miss you very much. As LV Tao spoke, he pulled Zhuowen and the rest towards the Long family. This scene caused many warriors in the surroundings to discuss and whisper among themselves. Ryuka had risen in the Sky City half a year ago. Moreover, the higher-ups of this Ryuka had a second-level Emperor Realm expert and a powerful level 6 Arcana master. There were also many celestial masters under their command. Therefore, in half a year, the Ryuka had quickly developed into the most powerful force in the Sky City, suppressing the other local forces in the Sky City. LV Tao was an extremely powerful genius in Ryuka. He was very famous in the Sky City, and was known as the most powerful person among the younger generation in the Sky City. At this moment, seeing the famous LV Tao treating Zhuowen's group so warmly, the other cultivators in the Sky City were naturally surprised. They secretly guessed the identity of Zhuowen's group. Under LV Tao's lead, Zhuowen also entered the Ryuka mansion. It had to be said that the Ryuka mansion was indeed quite magnificent. There were countless pavilions, terraces, and pavilions. There were also many cultivators guarding inside, and the security was very tight. When they entered the hall, Zhuowen also found that Zhuo Xiangding, LV Hantian, and Elder Shiwan were already waiting inside. When they saw Zhuowen, the 3 of them got up and happily welcomed him. After a round of greetings, Zhuowen also asked about the current development of the Ryuka mansion. The answer he received was indeed very gratifying. In the past half a year, the Ryuka mansion had completely established itself in the Sky City. Because of the Ryuka mansion's strength, it had attracted many cultivators in the Sky City, causing the number of people in the Ryuka mansion to reach nearly 1,000. This was only half a year. If the Ryuka mansion was given more time, it would probably develop even more. Zhuowen, if we become the most powerful force in the Dekangfu region, then the Ryuka mansion will be completely on the right track, LV Hantian said happily. Chapter 12:18. Second Layer Demon Emperor. Hearing Zhuowen's heroic words, the entire hall fell silent. Then Lu Hantian stood up abruptly and said excitedly, Haha, our horizons are too narrow. We are only restricted to the Great Song Prefecture. You are right. Ryuka wants to become the strongest force in the entire panicked Great World, and surpass the Great Demon Sect. In the hall, the others also came back to their senses. Their faces were flushed red, and their eyes were filled with excitement. Zhuowen, I plan to gather the Ryuka forces and take down the Great Song Prefecture. With the Great Song Prefecture as our headquarters, we will spread our forces to the other 6 prefectures. We will spread our Ryuka forces throughout the 7 prefectures and become the strongest force in the 7 prefectures. Lu Hantian suddenly proposed. Zhuowen shook his head and said, Big brother Hantian, Ryuka has only been developing for half a year. There is no hurry. Let's wait for 3 years before we make our move. The Ryuka is not as strong as you think. Hearing this, Lu Hantian came back to his senses. Just now, because of Zhuowen's words, his blood was stirred up, so he was hot-headed for a moment. He patted his head and said awkwardly, I was too excited. In these 3 years develop Ryuka well. After 3 years, we will take down the Great Song Prefecture. Then within 10 years, we will take down the other 6 prefectures, and let the panicked great world respect our Ryuka. After speaking, Zhuowen turned to Zhuo Xiangding, Elder Shiwan, and Lu Hantian and transmitted his voice. Grandfather, big brother Hantian, Elder Shiwan, I plan to go into seclusion for 3 years. The flow of time in the panicked great world is 365 times faster than the outside world. I plan to use this difference to improve my strength. Zhuo Xiangding, Elder Shiwan, and Lu Hantian looked at each other and nodded. They knew that outside the Blue Dragon Hall, there was an arcane heavenly master and 2 4th-layer Emperor Realm warriors waiting for him. If Zhuowen did not improve his strength as soon as possible, it would be difficult for him to go out. Therefore, Lu Hantian sent people to bring Zhuowen to a rather quiet attic in the Ryuka prefecture. Although Miao Lu, Luo Xing, and Qing Lian wanted to follow, they were stopped by Lu Hantian. Since Zhuowen needed to go into seclusion, he could not be disturbed. After entering the attic arranged by Lu Hantian, Zhuowen also brought the Lord of Extreme Devil with him. After all, his demonic Dao doppelganger had cultivated the Extreme Devil battle art, created by the Lord of Extreme Devil. In terms of demonic Dao, the Lord of Extreme Devil knew much more than him. Therefore, Zhuowen brought the Lord of Extreme Devil with him, mainly to help him cultivate the Extreme Devil battle art. After all, with a good teacher by his side, cultivation would be much faster than fumbling around on his own. After entering the attic, Zhuowen dismissed the people sent by Lu Hantian. With a wave of his hand, he summoned his demonic Dao doppelganger and said to the Lord of Extreme Devil, In the future, you will be responsible for guiding my demonic Dao doppelganger in the Extreme Devil battle art. You should be able to get my demonic Dao doppelganger to the 6th level in 3 years, right? The Lord of Extreme Devil bowed slightly and said politely, Don't worry, Master. With Master's talent, it shouldn't be a problem for him to reach the 6th level in 3 years. However, I have a suggestion. Would you like to hear it? Speak, Zhuowen said indifferently. The Extreme Devil battle art has the word battle in it. As the name suggests, this demonic Dao codex is most suitable for battle. Of course, if you want to break through faster, you only need to let your demonic Dao doppelganger fight more and find powerful opponents to fight. Through battle, you can comprehend the mysteries of the Extreme Devil battle art. Then, breaking through will be much easier, the Lord of Extreme Devil said respectfully. Zhuowen frowned slightly. You mean to say that if I want to break through the Extreme Devil battle art quickly, I have to constantly fight and advance through battle? Yes. Back then, I comprehended the concept of battle and battle, so I created this Extreme Devil battle art. The easiest way to break through in this demonic Dao codex is through battle. It is also the most suitable demonic Dao codex for demonic Dao cultivators. Demonic Dao cultivators do not fear battle or death. However, the first 9 levels of the Extreme Devil battle art are the foundation. It doesn't necessarily require battle comprehension. I can guide Master, the Lord of Extreme Devil said. If that's the case, then guide me first and help my demonic Dao doppelganger break through, Zhuowen said with a faint smile. The Lord of Extreme Devil nodded. He naturally had no objections. The pavilion was very large, and the courtyard surrounding it was even larger than the pavilion itself. The environment was elegant and serene. Zhuowen planned to let his demonic Dao doppelganger cultivate in the courtyard, and have the Lord of Extreme Devil properly guide him in cultivating the Extreme Devil battle art. Meanwhile, his main body and Buddhist Tao doppelganger planned to cultivate in the pavilion. Because of Xiaohe, Zhuowen did not have high hopes that his main body could break through in 3 years. After all, Xiaohe's origin was far too powerful. If he wanted to materialize, the amount of astral energy required was far too great. With Zhuowen's current cultivation speed, it would be difficult for him to accumulate enough astral energy for his main body to break through to the Emperor realm. As a result, Zhuowen placed the opportunity for his main body to break through to the Emperor realm in the embittered Sea of Misery's tomb. He knew that after powerful Emperor realm cultivators died, they would condense astral crystals with extremely dense astral energy. If he could find enough astral crystals in the tomb, then his main body would be able to accumulate enough astral energy. When that happened, he would be able to break through to the Emperor realm in one fell swoop. Xiaohe would also be able to completely materialize. Xiaohe really is a freak. Not only does materialization have to be delayed until the Emperor realm, but because of him, it's actually harder for my main body to break through to the Emperor realm than it is for my Buddhist and demonic Tao doppelganger, Jianchen murmured to himself. With a wave of his sleeve, he summoned his Buddhist Tao doppelganger and had it continue cultivating the nirvana of the Great Sun. His Buddhist Tao doppelganger was also a peak celestial venerable. Zhuowen hoped that his Buddhist Tao doppelganger could use the nirvana of the Great Sun to break through to the Emperor realm during this time. Kid, you're bad-mouthing me again. Xiaohe appeared on Zhuowen's shoulder and said unhappily. Zhuowen pursed his lips and said rather seriously, Xiaohe, do you think my Buddhist Tao doppelganger can use the nirvana of the Great Sun to break through to the Emperor realm? Xiaohe glanced at the Buddhist Tao doppelganger and said, it should be possible. However, the level of the nirvana of the Great Sun is a little low. I'm afraid it can only reach the first level of the Buddha realm at most. If you want your Buddhist Tao doppelganger to continue breaking through, you need to find a stronger Buddhist Tao codex. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded. However, there were even fewer Buddhist Tao cultivators in the Eastern land than demonic Tao cultivators. This Buddhist Tao codex was really difficult to find. Kid, have you forgotten about the monk in blood-red clothes? Isn't that guy from the Great Laying Temple in the Divine Spectre realm? After you enter the Divine Spectre realm, you can let your Buddhist Tao doppelganger enter the Great Laying Temple to cultivate. That place will definitely give your Buddhist Tao doppelganger a lot of opportunities, Xiaohe suddenly said. Zhuowen's eyes flashed. Xiaohe was right. He had forgotten the purpose of the monk in blood-red clothes. From the memories of the monk in blood-red clothes, he knew that the Great Laying Temple was not a weak force. It was said that there were saints in it as well. It was a powerful force in the Divine Spectre realm that was second only to the Divine Spectre Academy's inner court. Your idea is not bad. After I enter the Divine Spectre realm, I'll let my Buddhist Tao doppelganger enter the Great Laying Temple, and let my demonic Tao doppelganger enter the demonic Tao sect. This way, it won't delay the cultivation of my doppelganger, Zhuowen said with a grin. Time flew by quickly, and 3 years passed in a flash. On this day, Lu Hantian led the Ryuka people to Datsang City to attack the Datsang Mansion. The Great Song Manor's foundation was indeed deep. Although the Manor Lord and many elite cultivators had perished in the Great Devil Sect's ruins, there were still 2 martial emperors among them. One was a 3rd-level martial emperor, while the other was a 2nd-level martial emperor. Relying on the 2 Emperor Realm warriors, the Datsang Mansion was able to completely resist the Ryuka's attack. In fact, the Ryuka who were attacking were at a disadvantage in this battle. At this moment, in the Firmament City Ryuka, in the quiet courtyard, a towering black pillar suddenly soared into the sky. Demonic chi lingered around the black pillar. At the same time, countless demonic shadows descended from the sky. The ear-piercing screeches of the demonic nature resounded throughout the entire Long family. Under the black pillar, Zhuowen of the demonic Tao slowly stood up, his black and red hair fluttering in the wind. His black and red eyes stared at the endless demonic creatures in the sky, and he said coldly, "Demonic tribulation, what's there to fear?" As he spoke, Zhuowen of the demonic Tao took a step forward, rolling extreme demonic battle chi in his hand, condensing into an extreme demonic spear. With a wave of his right hand, demonic chi surged out, transforming into towering spear shadows. The surrounding demonic shadows were instantly pierced by these spear shadows, turning into rolling black chi. In the courtyard, the Lord of the extreme demonic Tao raised his head slightly, looking at Zhuowen of the demonic chi in the sky. His turbid eyes revealed a hint of surprise, and he muttered in a low voice, "In 3 years, he has cultivated the extreme demonic battle art to the 6th level, and even advanced to the 2nd level Demon Emperor. Master's talent can be said to be 1 in a million." Within 10 breaths, countless demonic shadows were dealt with by Zhuowen of the demonic Tao, and Zhuowen's aura soared to the extreme. His cultivation could be considered to have completely entered the 2nd level Demon Emperor realm. Zhuowen of the demonic Tao's aura was far more terrifying than the average 2nd level Emperor realm. Even 3rd level Emperors couldn't compare to him. With Zhuowen of the 2nd level Demon Emperor realm, Zhuowen was confident that he could fight 4th level Emperors. Whoosh! Zhuowen slowly landed in the courtyard and asked the Lord of the extreme demonic Tao, "How is the Ryuka army now?" "It's said that it's not very good. There are still 2 Emperor realm warriors in the Great Song Mansion. Coupled with the geographical advantage, the Ryuka army has yet to capture the Great Song Mansion," the Lord of the extreme demonic Tao said respectfully. "Then I'll go take a look," Zhuowen said nonchalantly. Then, he turned into a demonic cloud and quickly left the firmament city. At this moment, in the sky above Great Song City, 2 figures were constantly engaged in a fierce battle. 18 stars were constantly colliding, and the terrifying Emperor's aura was like a multiplied pressure, crushing everyone's body. Boom! The 2 figures clashed again, and then separated. One of them was a rather sloppy man, who looked like a beggar. He stared unkindly at a middle-aged man in purple in front of him. Chapter 12:19. Crushing all the cultivators in the Great Song Mansion stood on the city walls, looking down coldly at the Ryuka cultivators. Lu Hantian stood proudly in front of the Ryuka cultivators. He stared at the man in purple and said, "Our Ryuka's development is unstoppable. Your Great Song Mansion's elite cultivators, Songjia, will inevitably decline. Why don't you join our Ryuka?" "Nonsense. Our Great Song Mansion has stood tall for almost 100 years. How can we decline just because you say so?" the man in purple said coldly. Lu Hantian snorted and said, "Since that's the case, let's fight." As he spoke, Lu Hantian took a step forward, and 9 cold white Emperor stars shot out. At the same time, Lu Hantian's soul armor sealing gate came crashing down from the sky with the 9 stars revolving around it. After advancing to the Emperor realm, Lu Hantian's sealed door became even more terrifying. The huge door was tens of thousands of feet wide, and almost covered the entire Great Song City. The violet-clothed man's gaze narrowed, but he was not afraid. He also released his Emperor Star and Armor Soul. His Armor Soul was a massive violet goshawk. When it spread its wings, it was like a violet cloud that covered the sky. At this moment, whether it was the Ryuka cultivators or the Great Song City cultivators, they all looked up at the sky. When they saw the 2 Emperor Realm cultivators releasing their sealed door, they knew that they were going all out. The outcome of this battle depended on the outcome of the battle. The sealed door came crashing down, and a sharp whistling sound swept out. The purple eagle was not to be outdone. It let out a sharp cry, and its huge purple wings flapped. Gusts of purple wind turned into a purple storm that spread out. Boom! The sealed door and the purple storm collided, and an extremely terrifying shockwave spread out between the 2. The entire void trembled. "Seal!" Lu Hantian waved his sleeve, and the sealed gate erupted with an extremely blazing light. Countless strands of sealing power spread out, and directly enveloped the purple storm, causing the purple storm to freeze and be sealed in midair. Upon seeing this scene, the violet-robed young man's heart pounded. This Lu Hantian was also at the 3rd level of the Immortal Emperor realm, but his combat prowess was so terrifying. The violet-robed young man's eyes flickered. He stepped out and shouted, "Green Jade, help me." With that, the man in green who had been standing behind the man in purple nodded. He formed a seal with both hands, and immediately released his armor soul. The man named Qing Yu was another Imperial Realm cultivator from the Great Song Mansion. His cultivation was slightly lower than the man in purple. He should be around the second level of the Imperial Realm. However, even if he was at the second level of the Imperial Realm, if he teamed up with the man in purple, Lu Hantian would not be able to handle it. As expected, when Qing Yu released his vine armor soul, Lu Hantian's expression changed drastically. The vine was like a giant hand that slammed onto the sealed door. Then the sealed door, which had the upper hand, suddenly shook violently and was pushed back. The moment the sealed door was pushed back, the suppressed purple eagle let out a shrill cry. It flapped its wings, and its sharp voice rolled out. Together with the vine, it slammed onto the surface of the sealed door. Then there was a clear and crisp sound. Traces of cracks appeared on the surface of the sealed door. Pfft! Lu Hantian spat out a mouthful of blood from the corner of his mouth, and his complexion became extremely gloomy. He didn't expect that Qing Yu would suddenly attack him, so he was caught unprepared. Now that the purple-robed man had successfully defeated him, Lu Hantian had suffered a serious injury. Despicable. Many Ryuka warriors glared at the man in purple. The man in purple's cultivation was similar to Lu Hantian's. He was obviously suppressed by the latter, but he still asked his companions to attack Lu Hantian together. Bullying with numbers was a despicable act. The winner takes all. How is this despicable? The man in purple stood in the void and said calmly. He then signaled to Qing Yu, and the two of them continued to pursue Lu Hantian. They knew that as long as Lu Hantian died, the Ryuka army would collapse. If you want to touch old Han, you have to get through me first. An angry roar was heard. Then, Elder Shiwan took a step forward. Terrifying mental energy burst out from his spiritual ring, and yuan crystals that were emitting white light flew out. These yuan crystals were arranged in front of Elder Shiwan in a strange and mysterious way, forming a mysterious pattern array. 10,000 galloping horses. The cries of horses were heard. Then, countless shadows of horses rushed out from the array in front of Elder Shiwan. The sound of the galloping horses' hooves resounded in the entire space. It was as if 10,000 horses were galloping. It was a spectacular and terrifying scene. Destroy them together. These two people are the higher-ups of Ryuka. We can't let them live. The purple-robed man snorted coldly. He stepped on the purple goshawk's spine and gently clenched his right hand. A purple halberd appeared in his hand. The purple halberd exuded a terrifying emperor's aura. It was clearly a powerful emperor weapon. Qing Yu nodded. She stepped on the vines that grew endlessly, and a green longsword appeared in her hand. Both of them did not want to waste any time, and wanted to end the battle quickly. They both used their strongest attacks. The green sword radiance and countless purple halberd shadows turned into a terrifying purple energy hurricane. Boom! Boom! Immediately, the crowd below was shocked to see that in the sky above, the horrifying illusory image of thousands of horses first stopped, then collapsed inch by inch and disappeared without a trace. The purple-robed man in green jade continued to rush toward Elder Shiwan and Lu Hantian with great momentum. Lu Hantian's eyes were cold. He flipped his right hand and took out the Yuan Qi Tower. The Yuan Qi Tower grew from the size of a palm to a few hundred feet tall. It stood in front of Elder Shiwan and Lu Hantian. Boom! The purple-clothed man and Qing Yu didn't even glance at the tower as they directly launched attacks at it. However, to their astonishment, the tower was actually extremely tough. Their attacks were completely blocked by the tower, and the price they had to pay was merely a slight shake from the tower. This Emperor artifact is so tough, yet it's actually completely undamaged after receiving our full-powered attacks? Qing Yu's eyes narrowed as she spoke with some surprise. The two of us also have Emperor weapons in our hands. However, they are both low-tier Emperor weapons. Yet, it only shook slightly after receiving the attacks of two low-tier Emperor weapons. This pagoda-shaped Emperor weapon is most likely a mid-tier Emperor weapon or above. The purple-clothed man guessed with a fiery gaze. It's a mid-grade Emperor weapon. Qing Yu was startled. and a greedy look appeared in his eyes. The two of them looked at each other and nodded, as if they had reached an agreement. They had to kill Lu Hantian, and they had to seize the tower-shaped emperor weapon in front of them. With such a mid-grade emperor weapon guarding the Great Song Mansion, their Great Song Mansion would have another layer of protection. Kill! Thinking of this, Qing Yu and the man in purple attacked the Yuanqi Tower with all their might. The aftermath of the terrifying attacks stirred up a terrifying energy ripple in the air. Pucci! Lu Hantian's face instantly turned pale. After all, the Yuanqi Tower was a mid-grade emperor weapon. He was a low-grade emperor realm expert. To maintain the operation of the mid-grade emperor weapon would consume a lot of his energy. Now that the man in purple and Qing Yu were attacking with all their might, it could be said that Lu Hantian was in an even worse situation. Shiwan, you go first. Lu Hantian said to Elder Shiwan in a deep voice. Elder Shiwan shook his head and waved his sleeve. A terrifying mental energy formed a terrifying barrier in front of the Yuanqi Tower. It took a lot of pressure off Lu Hantian. If I leave, I'm afraid that you won't be able to hold on. Hearing this, Lu Hantian sighed and secretly blamed himself. I was too impulsive in this battle. I should have waited for Zhuowen to come out of seclusion before attacking the Great Song Mansion. Now that things have turned out like this, it's like trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. Elder Shiwan shook his head and said, It's not your fault. Didn't the information say that there was only one Emperor Realm expert in the Great Song Mansion? Who would have thought that there would be another Emperor Realm expert in there? If the information was accurate, you wouldn't have attacked the Great Song Mansion before Zhuowen. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, a terrifying demonic cloud surged in the sky. An earth-shattering demonic aura came crashing down, causing many cultivators in Great Song City to shudder in fear. What's going on? What a terrifying aura. Countless people raised their heads and stared at the demonic cloud that was getting closer and closer. Their eyes were filled with shock. Even the purple-clothed man in green jade, who were attacking the Vitality Pagoda, stopped their attacks and stared at the demonic cloud with fear in their eyes. The two of them could also feel the terrifying aura of the demonic cloud. Finally, the demonic cloud that covered the sky came to the sky above Great Song City. Then, the demonic cloud slowly descended in the shape of a funnel. At the entrance of the funnel, a demonic youth with long black and red hair slowly walked over. Every step that he took, the sound of his footsteps seemed to be able to stifle the heartbeat of the crowd, causing them to be unable to breathe. You are? The purple-clothed man's eyes narrowed. Looking at the demonic youth that was walking over, he actually felt a sense of fear and trepidation. Ryuka Dragon Script. Zhuowen said indifferently. Taking a step forward, he appeared above the purple-clothed man in green jade, as if he had teleported. He pressed down with his right hand, and a terrifying great demonic battle chi surged out, and turned into a terrifying demonic hand. Rumble! The purple-clothed man in green jade's faces changed drastically. With a sharp cry, the purple-clothed man patted the purple goshawk under his feet. The goshawk screeched and turned into a huge purple shadow exploding out. Green Jade also summoned her green vines and used her strongest attack to attack the demonic hand. Destroy! Zhuowen said softly. The demonic hand was like a hot knife through butter as it slammed onto the purple goshawk and green vines. Then a mournful scream rang out. The purple goshawk and green vines couldn't withstand the demonic hand for even a breath, and directly shattered into nothingness. You two will die too. The demonic hand didn't lose its momentum, and once again slammed onto the purple-clothed man and green jade. The two of them didn't even make a sound before they exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Chapter 12:20. Gaoshu swoosh. 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 Everyone's gaze fell on the demonic youth, who had descended from the demonic clouds. The purple-robed man and green jade were both at the third heaven emperor realm, while green jade was at the second heaven emperor realm. Both of them represented the strongest combat power in the Great Song Mansion. However, both of them were instantly killed by the demonic youth. All the martial artists in Great Song City started to tremble. Their faces were pale, and their legs were trembling. They stared at the demonic youth who was floating in the air with fear in their eyes. The only two Emperor Realm martial artists in Great Song Mansion had been killed by him. Who else could stop this demonic youth? Are you still going to put up a resistance? Zhuowen stood in the air and looked down at all the martial artists in Great Song City. His clear voice was like a demon's voice as it spread out and lingered in everyone's ears. All the martial artists in Great Song City slowly retreated. The fear in their eyes became more and more intense. They were starting to feel afraid. Those who surrender will not die. Those who put up a resistance will be killed. Zhuowen spat out another sentence, which finally destroyed the confidence of all the martial artists in Great Song City. Then, the city gates of Great Song City slowly opened, and the Ryuka martial artists cheered as they poured into Great Song City. Swoosh! Elder Shiwan and Lu Hantian rushed to Zhuowen's side. Lu Hantian looked at Zhuowen in surprise and said, "Zhuowen, your demonic avatar has broken through to the second heaven demon emperor realm?" Zhuowen smiled and nodded. He had confirmed Lu Hantian's guess. That's fast. Lu Hantian and Elder Shiwan looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. A demon emperor and an ordinary emperor realm martial artist were two completely different concepts. The difficulty of breaking through to the demon emperor realm was definitely hundreds of times more difficult than an ordinary emperor realm martial artist. Perhaps some talented geniuses could break through from the first heaven emperor realm to the second heaven emperor realm in 3 years, but it was impossible for a demonic cultivator to do so. However, Zhuowen had done it. There was no doubt that Zhuowen's talent in demonic cultivation was far beyond an ordinary demonic cultivator. Of course, if Lu Hantian and Elder Shiwan knew that Zhuowen had the Lord of the Supreme Demon Emperor realm by his side, they would not be so surprised. It was indeed not too difficult for a second heaven demon emperor to kill an ordinary third heaven emperor realm martial artist. After knowing that Zhuowen had reached the second heaven demon emperor realm, Lu Hantian and Elder Shiwan were not too surprised. You can occupy the Great Song Mansion first. Next, I plan to use my demonic avatar to conquer the other 6 prefectures with you. I will strive to unify the 7 prefectures within 5 years and bring my long family to an unparalleled level of power. As Zhuowen spoke, he took a step forward and entered Datsang Mansion. Elder Shiwan and Lu Hantian looked at each other and were pleasantly surprised. They knew that with the help of Zhuowen's demonic avatar, conquering the other 6 prefectures would be much easier. The reason Zhuowen proposed this was mainly because the Extreme Devil Lord had told him that if he wanted to make a quick breakthrough in his Extreme Devil battle art, the only way was through constant fighting. Zhuowen hoped that while conquering the other 6 prefectures, he would be able to fight against powerful Emperor Realm cultivators. This would allow his Extreme Devil battle art to break through and allow his Demon Emperor Realm to reach a higher level. When Ryuka completely conquered Datsang Mansion, the entire panicked great world was shaken. Ryuka's name spread across the 7 prefectures. Countless forces knew about the rising force called Ryuka. Although the upper echelons of the 7 major prefectures had all disappeared without a trace in the ruins of the Supreme Demon Sect, the 7 major prefectures were, after all, a huge force that had been passed down for many years, and their foundation was much deeper than ordinary forces. If they wanted to attack a colossus like the Great Song Mansion, without an extremely strong high-end force, it was simply impossible. The rumor about Ryuka's Long One also spread like wildfire. He had killed the remaining 2 Emperor Realm experts of the Datsang Mansion in an instant. One of them was a 3rd-level Emperor Realm expert, while the other was a 2nd-level Emperor Realm expert. Many warriors fell silent when they heard such a rumor. Killing a 3rd-level Emperor Realm expert in an instant. Such strength had already reached the level of the Lord of the 7 prefectures. If the Lord of the 7 prefectures didn't appear, no one would be able to compete with him. However, the Lord of the 7 prefectures had disappeared in the Supreme Demon Sect ruins. Therefore, everyone knew that the rise of Ryuka was unstoppable. After all, with such a terrifying existence like Long One, it was reasonable for Ryuka to conquer Datsang Mansion. The Ryuka spent half a year moving their base of operations to Datsang City. They began to establish their forces in Datsung City. At the same time, they announced that they would be recruiting new blood from the Datsung Prefecture. They would select talented geniuses to join the Ryuka, causing the Ryuka's forces to continuously grow. On the other hand, Demon Dao's Zhuowen led Lu Hantian, Elder Shiwan, Zhuo Xiangding, and a group of Ryuka elites to conquer the other 6 prefectures. With Zhuowen's existence and the terrifying battle strength of the Ryuka's upper echelons, the Ryuka army was unstoppable. They conquered one city after another. With the Datsung Prefecture as the center, they first conquered the Datsung Prefecture, followed by the Great Tang Prefecture, the Great Han Prefecture, and the Great Chu Prefecture. These 4 prefectures were much weaker than the Great Zhou Prefecture and the Great Qin Prefecture, and they did not even have many Emperor Realm cultivators left. As such, the Ryuka army did not encounter much resistance in these 4 prefectures. What was worth noting was that the Great Qin Mansion and the Great Zhou Institute were actually impregnable. Moreover, both the Great Qin Mansion and the Great Zhou Institute actually had a 4th-level Emperor Realm cultivator overseeing them. Although Zhuo Wen's demonic avatar had reached the 2nd-level Demon Emperor Realm, his battle prowess was at most comparable to a 4th-level Emperor Realm cultivator. It was basically impossible for him to defeat or kill a 4th-level Emperor Realm cultivator. Moreover, the Great Qin Prefecture and the Great Zhou Prefecture knew that the Ryuka army was too powerful, and the 2 prefectures were intimately interdependent. As such, the Great Qin Prefecture and the Great Zhou Prefecture came to an agreement and joined forces. The armies of the 2 prefectures gathered at the Great Qin Prefecture's Gaoshu Prefecture. Gaoshu Prefecture was an extremely dangerous place in the Great Qin Prefecture. Its terrain ranged from low to high, and it was a classic example of a place that was easy to defend and difficult to attack. This was also why the Great Zhou Prefecture's army was gathered at the Great Qin Prefecture. The Great Qin Prefecture and the Great Zhou Prefecture's 2 4th-stage emperors were also stationed at Gaoshu Prefecture. Zhuowen had fought with these 2 4th-stage emperors before, but he was unable to do anything to them. In fact, the 2 of them were even able to suppress Zhuowen when working together. We've already stopped at Gaoshu Prefecture for 2 years, and we haven't been able to attack for 2 whole years. Lu Hantian stood on a tall mountain slope as he stared at the Gaoshu Prefecture's perilous terrain with a trace of worry in his eyes. Elder Shiwan stood beside Lu Hantian and sighed. It's basically impossible for the Ryuka army to break through this perilous terrain. If we want to win this battle, Zhuowen has to defeat the 2 Emperor Realm cultivators and destroy the only obstacle at Gaoshu Prefecture. Only then will our Ryuka army be able to enter Gaoshu Prefecture unimpeded and take down the Great Qin Prefecture. Once the Great Qin Prefecture takes down the Great Zhou Prefecture, the already deserted Great Zhou Prefecture will not be a problem either. Lu Hantian nodded. In the void behind him, there were extremely dense demonic clouds lingering and gathering. Above the demonic clouds, a demonic young man with long black and red hair sat cross-legged quietly. Zhuowen is breaking through to the 3rd level of the Demon Emperor Realm. If he can completely break through to the 3rd level of the Demon Emperor Realm, the 2 Emperor Realm cultivators from the Great Qin Prefecture and Great Zhou Prefecture won't be a problem. I hope that Zhuowen can succeed this time, Lu Hantian muttered in a low voice. He was very clear that this battle was mainly dependent on Zhuowen. If Zhuowen could defeat the 2 Emperor Realm cultivators, then the Ryuka army would definitely win this battle. Above the demonic clouds, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes and muttered in a low voice. There's still some distance between me and the 3rd level of the Demon Emperor Realm. Perhaps I can try this. As he spoke, Zhuowen flicked his finger and took out a black ball. This black ball contained extremely dense extreme demonic battle chi. It was the 2 balls of extreme demonic battle chi essence that he had obtained from the 2 demon statues. Back then, Zhuowen had only used 1 ball of extreme demonic battle chi essence to form his demon body, and he had kept the other ball. Now, Zhuowen decided to use the remaining ball of extreme demonic battle chi essence to forcefully break through to the 3rd level of the Demon Emperor Realm. I hope it won't disappoint me. As he spoke, Zhuowen clenched his right hand and crushed the black ball. The terrifying extreme demonic battle chi circled around Zhuowen and covered his entire body, making him look even more mysterious and distant. In the land of Gaochu, there were groups of soldiers in fine armor patrolling the various passages. The inside was airtight and heavily guarded. However, these soldiers all had a rather similar action, and that was to frequently raise their heads to look at the sky with reverence in their eyes. This was because there were two majestic figures sitting cross-legged quietly floating in the sky above Gaoshu. These two figures were surrounded by a terrifying emperor's might. The emperor's might that spread out was like a towering mountain, causing all things to tremble. These two figures were the only emperor realm cultivators in the Great Qin Palace and Great Zhou Institute. The emperor realm cultivator from the Great Qin Palace was called Qin Lei. He was rather old, and his hair was white. However, his face was rosy and he was as lively as a young man. The emperor realm cultivator from the Great Zhou Institute was called Zhou Yan. This Zhou Yan was an extremely talented youth in the Great Zhou Institute. He was only around 30 years old, but his cultivation had already reached the emperor realm. These two people were left behind by the Great Qin Palace and Great Zhou Institute's mansion masters in advance to suppress the bad elements in the Great Zhou Institute and maintain order in the Great Demonic Sect. After all, this trip to the Great Demonic Sect ruins was risky. If they brought all the elites in the Great Qin Palace, and something unexpected happened, the Great Zhou Institute would definitely fall into chaos. That Ryuka Longwen has already stayed in the demonic clouds for 2 months. I wonder what he's doing. Zhou Yan frowned slightly. His sharp gaze gathered above the demonic clouds in the sky, as if he wanted to see through it. Chapter 12:21. 6 Ding 6 Jia Formation. While Qin Lei and Zhou Yan were secretly conversing, the demonic clouds in the sky suddenly surged wildly, as if something was stirring within the demonic clouds. It was extremely strange. As the demonic clouds churned, a terrifying demonic aura spread out, causing the surrounding air to stagnate. Boom, boom, boom. Demonic hurricanes swept out from the layers of demonic clouds, attracting the attention of countless cultivators. Zhou Yan's pupil shrank. He also felt the sudden increase in demonic aura in the demonic clouds. His sharp eyes pierced through the layers of demonic hurricanes and landed on a figure in the core area. At the core of the demonic clouds, Zhuowen's hair fluttered wildly. The demonic aura around him was like a black python, rapidly lingering around his body. His black and red demonic eyes became deeper and deeper, carrying a mysterious demonic light. His demonic aura was monstrous. Moreover, as time passed, Zhuowen's aura became more and more intense, like a small spark turning into a raging inferno. His aura increased rapidly, causing Zhou Yan's heart to palpitate and his body to tremble. This guy is breaking through. He intends to break through to the 3rd level of the Demon Emperor realm. Qin Lei's right hand trembled as his lips trembled slightly. Zhou Yan's expression changed drastically. When Zhuowen was only a 2nd-level Demon Emperor, his battle strength was already extremely difficult to deal with. The two of them, who were 4th-level Demon Emperors, could not suppress Zhuowen even if they joined forces. Now if Zhuowen broke through to the 3rd level of the Demon Emperor realm, Zhuowen would be even more terrifying. At that time, the two of them might not be his match. Let's attack together. We must stop Zhuowen from breaking through to the 3rd level of the Demon Emperor realm. Zhou Yan and Qin Lei finally understood the seriousness of this matter. They knew very well that if Zhuowen broke through to the 3rd level of the Demon Emperor realm, the two of them would be in a bad situation. Whoosh! Without saying a word, Zhou Yan and Qin Lei rushed out. Terrifying Emperor's aura spread out, and 18 Emperor stars descended from the void. In a strange trajectory, they took the lead and rushed towards the demonic clouds in the sky. Qin Lei and Zhou Yan actually made a move. Not good. Zhuowen is currently at the critical juncture of breaking through. Lu Hantian also saw the two terrifying emperor mites that suddenly erupted from Gaoshu, and his face changed greatly. He naturally saw Zhuowen's breakthrough, but he didn't expect Zhou Yan and Qin Lei to attack without saying a word. wanting to interrupt Zhuowen's breakthrough. Sure, Yuan, it's up to you. You should have prepared enough in the past 2 months. You must not let them interrupt Zhuowen's breakthrough. Lu Hantian suddenly looked at Elder Shiwan behind him. When Zhuowen absorbed Super Devil Battle Qi 2 months ago, Lu Hantian and Elder Shiwan had already guessed that Zhuowen might make a breakthrough in the near future. Therefore, Elder Shiwan had already arranged a basic restriction formation in the region where Zhuowen was. 6-6 armor formation. Elder Shiwan bellowed and waved his sleeve. Suddenly, pieces of meta crystals gushed out from his spiritual ring. With the void where Zhuowen was as the center, 6 armor shields appeared. Each armor shield was close to 1,000 feet in size. Just one armor shield alone had the power to cover the sky and cover the sun. Boom! The 18 Emperor stars descended, and the terrifying pressure seemed to have increased gravity by hundreds or thousands of times, causing the entire void to collapse, forming a terrifying black hole. Bang! 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 Dazzling golden light appeared on the surface of the 6 armor shields. When the 18 Emperor stars landed on the surface of the shields, an earth-shattering explosion sounded. It was as if thunder had fallen from the 9 heavens. The 6 armor shields were extremely tough. Although the power of the 18 Emperor stars was terrifying, the 6 armor shields only shook for a moment before returning to normal. However, the 18 Emperor stars were ejected and fell beside Zhou Yan and Qin Lei. A 6th grade defensive origin formation? Zhou Yan stopped dozens of meters away, and a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. Qin Lei snorted coldly and said, "Brother Zhou, let's end this quickly. Once Zhuowen breaks through to the 3rd Heaven Demon Emperor realm, we will also be in trouble. Don't hold back. Let's break through this 6th grade origin formation immediately." Zhou Yan nodded. Immediately, the two of them took out their own life Emperor weapons. Zhou Yan's Emperor weapon was a large saber with a ghost head. It was more than 10 feet long, and there was a strange line of blood on the blade, as if a drop of blood had left a mark on the blade. Qin Lei's Emperor weapon was a long rod that looked like a rock. Blood Ghost Head. Fire Ring Rod Technique. As soon as the two of them took out their Emperor weapons, they unleashed their strongest moves. Zhou Yan slashed at the void with his Ghost Head saber in his right hand. Immediately, the bloody lines on the blade became even denser and more demonic. Then, the bloody lines burst out and turned into a bloody skull. The bloody skull was close to 10,000 feet in size, and almost dyed the horizon blood red. Qin Lei was not to be outdone. He waved the long rod in his hand, and suddenly, a roaring sea of fire swept out with a whistling momentum. Countless rod shadows were like a monstrous tsunami, and the rod shadows were mixed with extremely terrifying flames. It looked like a sea of fire that could burn the sky. It was terrifying and terrifying. How terrifying! In the Ryuka camp, countless warriors raised their heads and stared at the bloody skull that covered the sky and the countless rod shadows. Their hearts trembled. This was the power of 2 4th-level emperors. In front of this power, they were like ants that could not withstand a single blow. Lu Hantian and Elder Shiwan, who were in the 6-6 armor formation, were both in the middle of the formation. Their eyelids twitched violently as they stared at the 2 attacks that were coming towards them. A sense of inferiority rose in their hearts. Boom! 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 The 2 attacks arrived in an instant and blasted on the 6 armor shield. Then, the 6-6 armor formation shook violently, and cracks appeared on its surface. Break! Zhou Yan took a step forward, and the ghost head broadsword in his hand fiercely smashed onto the shield. Immediately, the cracks on the surface of the shield increased at a crazy speed. Finally, it shattered into countless fragments, revealing the demonic clouds that were constantly churning within the shield. It's not that easy to break through. Zhou Yan laughed nastily. With a twist of his wrist, the ghost head broadsword drew a 180-degree arc and slashed out horizontally. The huge bloody skull behind him suddenly opened its bloody mouth and drilled into the surging demonic clouds, swallowing all of the demonic clouds in one gulp. Looking at this scene, many of the Ryuka warriors turned pale. Zhuowen, who was at the critical moment of his breakthrough, had been swallowed by the bloody skull. Even if Zhuowen did not die, he would be disturbed by this and suffer from the backlash. Bastard! Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan couldn't help but curse. They were so angry that they were trembling in anger. Two ants dare to scold me? Zhou Yan's cold gaze immediately fell on Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan. He stepped forward, and the large sword slashed out horizontally. A strange blood line flashed across the blade, as it slashed in front of the two. Boom! Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan's face changed drastically. Lu Hantian waved his right hand, and summoned the elemental Qi Pagoda to block in front of him. However, Zhou Yan's strength was much stronger than Lu Hantian. When the slash came, Lu Hantian spat out a mouthful of blood, and retreated a few steps back. Hehe, the two of you are the top 2 Ryuka warriors other than Long One. If I kill the two of you, the Ryuka army will collapse. Zhou Yan's gaze was cruel as he dashed out again. This time, he used all of his strength, intending to kill both Lu Hantian and Elder Shi Yuan together. Swoosh! However, the moment Zhou Yan rushed out, a sound of something breaking through the air burst out. Zhou Yan's pupil shrank, and he hurriedly turned around to block it. Unfortunately, his movements were too slow. The moment he raised the ghost head broadsword, the sound of something breaking through the air had already reached his chest and pierced through it. Puff! Zhou Yan spat out a mouthful of blood as he was sent flying by the huge force. Finally, he slammed into a rock wall not far away. When he struggled to get up, he was shocked to find that the thing that pierced through his chest was a great demon spear that was filled with demonic aura. Is that Long One? Zhou Yan's right hand gripped the handle of the supreme demon long spear as he stared at the blood-colored skull in the air. At this moment, the blood-colored skull was roaring miserably. Then, it suddenly swelled up and exploded into a cloud of blood-colored powder. Amidst the countless blood-colored powder, a figure surrounded by countless demonic shadows slowly walked over. A pair of black and red demonic eyes coldly stared at Zhou Yan, causing the latter's hair to stand on end. Break! Zhou Yan slowly spat out a single word. Suddenly, the countless demonic shadows surrounding him screamed, and were shattered into nothingness. As soon as the demonic shadows disappeared, Zhou Yan's aura became even more terrifying. It directly soared from the 2nd level of the Demon Emperor to the 3rd level of the Demon Emperor. Are you trying to interrupt my breakthrough? As he spoke, Zhou Yan took a step forward and arrived in front of Zhou Yan in an instant. He took out his exterminating oath-breaking blade and slashed horizontally. 1,000 feet long bloody blade shadow stretched across the void and fell heavily on Zhou Yan's body. No! Zhou Yan's eyes bulged as he shouted. He raised the ghost head blade in his hand and tried to block the terrifying blade shadow. Unfortunately, Zhou Yan, who had broken through to the 3rd Heaven Demon Emperor, used the exterminating oath-breaking blade. Its power was much more terrifying than before. He already had the strength to kill a 4th Heaven Demon Emperor. As the blade shadow fell, Zhou Yan's voice was completely drowned out. Then the rock wall turned into nothingness. There was nothing there. Zhou Yan and the rock wall behind him had been completely destroyed. Hiss hiss hiss. Gasps could be heard. Zhou Yan had only used one blade and Zhou Yan, who was a 4th Heaven Demon Emperor, had died without leaving a corpse behind. Run! Looking at this scene, Qin Lei did not hesitate and immediately rushed towards the land of Gaoshu. Zhou Yan, who had broken through to the 3rd Heaven Demon Emperor, was too terrifying. Zhou Yan was killed in one move. How could he have the courage to stay and face Zhou Yan? Chapter 1222. 10 years. Qin Lei's expression changed drastically. He had naturally sensed the slaughtering abstinence violation blade coming down from the sky. With a loud roar, he waved the long rod in his hand. Countless rod shadows, which were accompanied by flames, shot out explosively towards Zhou Yan. Chaotic mundane world. Zhou Yan indifferently spat out these words, and a worldly concept swept out from the slaughter abstinence violation blade and spread out. Affected by this concept, the staff in Qin Lei's hand stiffened and actually stopped in midair, and his eyes became even more blurred. Taking advantage of the fact that Qin Lei was mesmerized by the worldly concept, Zhou Yan's slaughtering abstinence violation blade turned into a beam of red light. With a 60-degree arc, it bypassed the long staff that was swinging horizontally. The terrifying blade light actually swept past Qin Lei's neck. When Qin Lei woke up from the mundane world intent realm, he felt extreme pain in his neck. Then he realized that his body was slowly falling to the ground in front of him. A dull thud was heard when his head hit the ground. Then, Qin Lei felt his scalp tighten. He realized that Zhuowen had unknowingly reached out with his right hand and grabbed his head. Then his consciousness became more and more blurry. In the end, his consciousness fell into darkness. Zhuowen held Qin Lei's head and stepped into the void. Countless demonic clouds surrounded him. As he came to the top of Gao Shu, he threw Qin Lei's head down and said in a cold voice, "Qin Lei and Zhou Yan are dead. Do you still want to resist?" Rumble. Qin Lei's head rolled into the inner wall of Gao Shu like a rubber ball. Countless warriors in Gao Shu saw it. Then, the inner wall of Gao Shu fell into a strange silence. They seemed to be digesting the shocking reality in front of them. After a short moment of silence, the entire Gao Shu became restless. The two fourth-level emperors in Gao Shu, Zhou Yan and Qin Lei, were dead. Although many warriors did not dare to believe it, when Qin Lei's head was thrown down from Zhuowen's hand, they had no choice but to believe it. "Now, I'll give you a choice. Go with me and you'll prosper. Go against me and you'll die." Zhuowen clasped his hands behind his back. His demonic voice resounded in everyone's ears. "Everyone, don't be fooled by him. Gao Shu is the Great Qin Mansion's most powerful military fortress. It won't be easy for him to charge in by himself." Suddenly, a voice rang out from the crowd, causing the originally wavering hearts of the crowd to instantly return to their senses. "Yes, how can we surrender just like that?" Immediately, many of the soldiers who had regained their senses were fired up. Under the encouragement of that person, they were filled with fighting spirit. "Are you not going to surrender?" Zhuowen narrowed his eyes as his attention landed on the person who was encouraging the crowd. This person was clad in silver-white armor, and his gaze was somewhat sinister. His aura was actually around the Second Heaven Emperor realm, and he should be a general of the Great Qin Mansion. "Die!" Zhuowen roared as he clenched his right hand. Instantly, a supreme demon spear appeared in his hand. With a swoosh, the spear shot out towards the general clad in silver-white armor. That person's eyelids twitched when he saw the supreme demon spear shooting towards him. A look of fear appeared in his eyes as he hurriedly retreated, following which, the supreme demon spear slammed into the ground where he was standing, instantly creating a crater that was dozens of feet wide. Countless rocks flew in all directions. Looking at the crater created by the supreme demon spear, the general's heart trembled. He knew that if he had been hit by the supreme demon spear, he would have died without a doubt. "Release the arrows and kill this traitor." The general steadied his mind and shouted. Immediately, countless soldiers gathered on the land of Gao Shu and lined up neatly. Soon after, the sound of bowstrings being drawn rang out continuously, appearing to be very neat and tidy. Swoosh, swoosh, following which, the sound of bowstrings being drawn continuously rang out. Countless arrows filled the entire sky, transforming into a dense rain of arrows that instantly enveloped Zhuowen's entire body. Zhuowen quietly stared at the countless arrows as he stood in the air. With a stretch of his right hand, surging demonic qi revolved around his body, forming a black barrier. Countless arrows rained down and bombarded the black barrier, but they were unable to move it in the slightest. After this wave of arrows passed, Zhuowen stroked his right hand, and the black barrier gradually disappeared. His pair of demonic eyes looked down at the people of Gao Shu as he indifferently said, "Are you sure you can kill me?" Looking at the unharmed Zhuowen in the sky, all the soldiers of Gao Shu felt a chill in their hearts. This fellow was too terrifying. Such a terrifying rain of arrows actually had no effect on him. "Continue," the general once again roared. But his words were only halfway through when they abruptly stopped, as if they were choked in his throat. After that, Zhuowen appeared in front of this person at an unknown time, and grabbed his neck with his right hand. "Continue speaking," Zhuowen said indifferently. The general's eyes narrowed as he waved his hands, but it was of no use. Zhuowen's demonic power had completely sealed the power of his body. It was impossible for him to escape from Zhuowen's palm. "Kacha!" Zhuowen didn't hold back. His right hand exerted force, and instantly, the general's head tilted to one side as he completely lost his breath. The vitality in his body was also cut off by Zhuowen. Those who comply will prosper, those who defy will die. Throwing the general aside, Zhuowen looked around as his indifferent voice rang out. The surrounding soldiers fell into silence. Not long after, these soldiers put down the weapons in their hands. They were very clear that with a terrifying expert like Zhuowen, no matter how many of them there were, they were probably like ants and would be slaughtered by Zhuowen. Open the city gates, Zhuowen continued. The surrounding soldiers opened the city gates in a daze, and the Ryuka army swarmed in, completely occupying Gaochu. The faces of all the Ryuka cultivators glowed with excitement. They knew that once Gaochu fell, the Great Qin Mansion and Great Zhou Institute would fall as well. Big brother Hantian, elder Shiwan, I'll leave the rest to the two of you. I plan to make a trip back. After dealing with the matters in Gaochu, Zhuowen didn't plan to stay any longer. After instructing Lu Hantian and elder Shiwan, Zhuowen left Gaochu. Oh, demonic runes? Just as Zhuowen flew 10,000 miles into the sky, a black pattern appeared on his face. He wasn't unfamiliar with this pattern. It was the demonic runes he had obtained from an abandoned demonic weapon. Sitting in the sky, Zhuowen transmitted his thoughts to Xiaohei in his main body, telling Xiaohei about the abnormality of the demonic runes. However, Xiaohei's reply was to tell Zhuowen to come back first. Half a month later, the demonic Dao Zhuowen returned to the Great Song Province's Long family. Within the courtyard, his main body and his Buddhist avatar were still cultivating. But when the demonic Dao Zhuowen arrived at the courtyard, his main body slowly stood up and walked towards the demonic Dao Zhuowen. His attention also fell on the demonic Dao Zhuowen's face that was constantly flickering with demonic runes. Xiaohei, what's going on? Zhuowen asked with a frown. Your demon avatar has reached the level of Third Heaven Demon Emperor and is qualified to forge his own demonic weapon. That's why this demonic rune has such an abnormality. It wants to become the core of your demonic weapon. Xiaohei pondered for a while and said, Demonic weapon? Zhuowen's pupil shrank. He had heard a lot about the power of the demonic weapon from Xiaohei. If he could really forge a demonic weapon, it would undoubtedly be beneficial to his combat strength. Kid, you can engrave this demonic rune on the slaughtering oath-breaking saber, and use your demonic power to nurture the slaughtering oath-breaking saber. Let the demonic rune and the saber fuse together. Perhaps you can create an extremely powerful and terrifying demonic weapon. Xiaohei suddenly said. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He nodded and said, let me give it a try. If it really works, perhaps the power of the slaughtering oath-breaking saber can be enhanced. With that, Zhuowen's mind moved slightly. The demon avatar took out the slaughtering oath-breaking saber, and then reached his right hand into his cheek. With a gentle pinch, he grabbed the demonic rune on his cheek, and slowly imprinted the demonic rune on the blade of the slaughtering oath-breaking saber. Beezity beezity beezity. An ear-piercing sound resounded. Immediately, Zhuowen discovered that the demonic rune was surging with demonic aura. This demonic aura was getting denser and denser, almost shrouding the entire slaughtering oath-breaking saber. Thump, thump, thump. A heartbeat sounded. The demonic rune began to pulse rhythmically like a heart, continuously instilling demonic power into the slaughtering oath-breaking saber. At the same time, the demon avatar Zhuowen held the slaughtering oath-breaking saber with both hands. His own demonic power was also infused into it. It blended with the demonic power of the demonic rune and converged into a surging demonic power, refining the slaughtering oath-breaking saber. Now, it's just a matter of time, Xiaohei said calmly. Zhuowen nodded. He was not in a hurry. Only 5 years had passed in the panicked big world. In other words, only 5 days had passed in the outside world. There were still 2 months before the opening of the emperor's tomb. Hence, Zhuowen planned to stay in the panicked big world for 10 years. He was prepared to make his Buddha avatar break through to the emperor realm in these 10 years. If possible, it would be best for his body to break through as well. Of course, Zhuowen knew that the chances of his body breaking through to the emperor realm were much lower than that of his Buddha avatar. He was just giving it a try. In fact, his main focus was still on his Buddha avatar. Cultivation knew no time. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Zhuowen used the third year to completely refine the demonic rune into the slaughtering oath-breaking saber, making the slaughtering oath-breaking saber more compatible with his demon avatar. Moreover, with the demonic rune, the surface of the slaughtering oath-breaking saber was no longer blood-red. Instead, it was black-red. The blood chi and demon chi existed at the same time. Zhuowen named it the slaughtering demonic saber. In the 7th year, the Buddha avatar, who had been cultivating the nirvana of the Great Sun, finally welcomed the opportunity to break through. In that year, the light of Buddha shone on the entire Daqingfu region. A huge Buddha shadow appeared above the void. The pair of Buddha eyes that opened and closed contained the evolution of the century. There was no sadness or joy. On that day, countless warriors in the Daqingfu region looked up at the Buddha shadow. A strange feeling of worship arose in their hearts. Chapter 12:23. Trust. In the past 10 years, the structure of the panicked Great World had changed greatly. The 7 prefectures had been completely separated and were unified by a faction called the Ryuka. The Ryuka was even more ruthless than the extreme demon sect. Back then, the extreme demon sect was only above the 7 prefectures. However, the Ryuka uprooted the 7 prefectures and unified them. The entire panicked Great World was now under the rule of the Ryuka. Although the Ryuka's action of unifying the 7 prefectures had caused dissatisfaction among many factions, they had learned from the mistakes of the 7 prefectures. Most of the factions had swallowed their dissatisfaction and did not dare to make any statements. They knew that there was a mysterious Ryuan in the Ryuka. This person had even killed the 4th-level martial emperors of the Great Qin and Great Zhou prefectures. Ordinary factions could not afford to offend such an expert. After the Ryuka had unified the 7 prefectures, they had developed rapidly and produced many talents. The headquarters of the Ryuka was located in the Great Song Prefecture. The original Great Song City had been changed to Black Dragon City. In the center of Black Dragon City stood a stone statue that was several hundred feet tall. This stone statue was in the image of a young man dressed in a black robe. Although his face was ordinary, it was very pleasing to the eye, especially his eyes, which were filled with fearless sharpness. Is this person Ryuan of the Ryuka? It is said that 10 years ago, he single-handedly killed the 4th-level martial emperors of the Great Qin and Great Zhou prefectures, and took down the final barrier of the 2 prefectures Gaoshu. Many cultivators in Black Dragon City would subconsciously raise their heads to look at the stone statue when they passed by. At the same time, they whispered to each other in awe. The reason why Zhuowen was so famous was not only because of the battle 10 years ago, but also because of the Ryuka's efforts to promote him. They knew that Ryuka needed a pillar of support, and this pillar had to be tall enough to support Ryuka. And this candidate was naturally Zhuowen. In the courtyard, a figure who was sitting cross-legged slowly stood up. Looking at his aura that did not fluctuate much, his eyes showed a touch of disappointment. He muttered in a low voice, "I have been in the Pang world for 15 years, and there is no sign of my original body breaking through. However, I can clearly feel that I am not far away from the Emperor realm." This person was Zhuowen's original body. In the Pang world, his original body basically stayed in the courtyard to cultivate. In the past 5 years, he had relied on his demonic Dao doppelganger, and his original body had never come out. However, even though he cultivated so diligently, Zhuowen still helplessly discovered that his original body was still a little short of breaking through to the Emperor realm. You haven't accumulated enough. If your original body wants to break through to the Emperor realm, I think you can only enter the Emperor's tomb to search for opportunities. Xiao Hei's voice slowly rang out. Hearing this, Zhuowen felt rather helpless. However, the breakthrough of his original body did indeed depend on opportunities. Otherwise, who knew how long it would take to break through just by cultivating normally? After putting away the Buddha and demonic Dao doppelganger, Zhuowen slowly walked out of the courtyard. At the same time, he summoned the Grand Demon Lord over with his mind. Master! A black fog spread out and turned into the image of a hunched old man. The Grand Demon Lord bowed slightly and greeted him respectfully. Did anything happen in the Pang world while I was in seclusion? Zhuowen asked. The Grand Demon Lord nodded. Then, he briefly explained the Ryuka's unification of the 7 prefectures. Zhuowen was not surprised. Back then, when his demonic Dao doppelganger broke through Gaoshu, the Ryuka's destruction of the Great Qin and Great Zhou prefectures had been a foregone conclusion. Coupled with the combination of Lu Hantian and Elder Shiwan, it would be difficult to find any experts or organizations that could deal with the Ryuka in the 7 prefectures. You've also recovered to the 3rd Heaven Demon Emperor? As if he sensed something, Zhuowen's sharp gaze landed on the Grand Demon Lord as he asked in surprise. The Grand Demon Lord hurriedly bowed and said, This old servant was originally a 7th Heaven Demon Emperor. Although this is this old servant's doppelganger, with my previous experience, the speed of my recovery is not very slow. Fortunately, I've recovered to the 3rd Heaven Demon Emperor realm in the past 15 years. Zhuowen nodded but did not say anything. He did not doubt the Grand Demon Lord's words. This guy was a high-level demon emperor. With this old man's experience, the speed of his recovery would not be too slow. Gather the Ryuka's upper echelons first. I need to talk to them about some things, Zhuowen said indifferently. The Grand Demon Lord bowed and slowly retreated. Obviously, he was going to look for someone. 30 minutes later, in the main hall of the Ryuka Palace, all the upper echelons of the Ryuka Palace were gathered here. Among them were Lu Hantian, Elder Shiwan, Lve Tao, Luo Xing, Qing Lian, and Zhuowen's 5 servants led by Ziang. At the same time, Zhuo Xiangding of the Zhuo family sat in another corner of the hall with Zhuo Tian, Zhuo Xiang'er, and Zhuo Meishue, the 3 genius disciples of the Zhuo family, who had awakened their dragon souls. Everyone in the hall was excited. They had heard from the Grand Demon Lord that Zhuowen had come out of seclusion. So, when the Grand Demon Lord summoned them, they all put down what they were doing and gathered in the hall. Outside the hall, a figure slowly walked in, went straight to the empty seat at the head of the hall, and slowly sat down. Zhuowen! Everyone's gazes fell on the figure, and they all softly muttered Zhuowen's name. This time, I've gathered everyone here, because I have a few things to tell you. I've already stayed in the panicked world for 15 years. In other words, 15 days should have passed in the outside world. I plan to leave the Blue Dragon Hall, Zhuowen said in a deep voice as he tapped the armrest with his right hand. You want to leave the Blue Dragon Hall? Zhuowen, there's no rush. After all, you still have plenty of time. It might be better for you to leave when you're stronger. After all, the 3 people from the Blue Dragon Hall are waiting for you outside, Lu Hantian said with a frown. Zhuowen shook his head. That's why I've gathered all of you here. Next, Zhuowen told everyone about the Emperor's tomb in the Sea of Misery that was about to open. The Emperor's tomb was the burial ground of the strongest faction in the Sea of Misery, the Emperor's domain. It was said that countless Emperor realm cultivators had died there. It was also said that there was the heart of imperial power, which could allow a heavenly venerate cultivator to advance to the Emperor realm. Apart from that, there were many rare treasures, including many Emperor weapons. It could be said that the Emperor's tomb was definitely a good place for heavenly venerates and Emperor realm cultivators. If a cultivator could obtain a fortuitous encounter there, their cultivation could advance by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. Everyone in the hall fell silent after hearing Zhuowen's story. Lu Hantian pondered for a moment before saying, Zhuowen, do you mean that you want us to participate in the Emperor's tomb? The Emperor's tomb is not a small fortuitous encounter. That's why I said it. It depends on your own decision. Of course, you don't need to all go. Just a part of it will be enough. Whether it's heavenly venerates or Emperor realm cultivators, the Emperor's tomb will definitely be of great benefit to you, Zhuowen said with a nod. Lu Hantian nodded, his eyes filled with light. He was quite interested in the Emperor's tomb. Elder Shiwan, who was sitting beside him, laughed and said, Old Han, you should go out with Zhuowen. With your talent, if you can obtain a fortuitous encounter in the Emperor's tomb, I'm afraid your strength will increase very quickly. However, Lu Hantian looked hesitant and said, I'm still a little worried about the Ryuka. If Zhuowen and I leave, the Ryuka's strength will definitely be weakened. Zhuowen shook his head and said, Brother Lu, don't worry. Ziyang has already broken through to the second-level Emperor realm. Bai Mei, Huang Meng, Guanghan, and Shiyu are also first-level Emperor realm cultivators. With them and the elite troops of the Ryuka, it's really unlikely that there will be anyone who can threaten us in the entire panicked world. Zhuowen is right. Old Han, you've delayed a lot of cultivation time for the Ryuka. With your talent, I'm afraid you've already reached the 4th-level Emperor realm. However, you're still stuck at the 3rd-level Emperor realm. You should go out with Zhuowen and have a good adventure. Elder Shiwan said with a smile. Shiwan is right. Hantian, your talent is unquestionable. It's better to stay by Zhuowen's side. Shiwan, and I will take good care of the Ryuka's matters. Zhuo Xiangding advised with a red face. Back then, Zhuo Xiangding's cultivation was not high. However, ever since he entered the Azure Dragon Palace, Zhuowen had deliberately poured some resources on Zhuo Xiangding. Therefore, Zhuo Xiangding had cultivated to the peak Heavenly Master realm. However, Zhuo Xiangding's talent was not high. The peak Heavenly Master realm was actually his limit. If he wanted to break through to the Emperor realm, he would probably need an expert to cleanse his meridians and marrow. However, Zhuowen was unable to do so now. When his cultivation was higher in the future, Zhuowen planned to forcibly raise Zhuo Xiangding's cultivation to the Emperor realm. After all, the higher the cultivation of a warrior, the longer the corresponding lifespan. As Zhuowen's grandfather, Zhuo Xiangding naturally had some selfishness in his heart. He wanted Zhuowen to live longer. It was precisely because Zhuo Xiangding was Zhuowen's grandfather that although his cultivation was not high, his status in Ryuka was similar to Lu Hantian and Elder Shiwan. Many people in Ryuka respected this old man very much. Seeing that Elder Shiwan and Zhuo Xiangding had said so, Lu Hantian did not intend to be pretentious. His eyes flashed as he nodded and said, Since that's the case, then I won't be pretentious. This time, I will definitely go out with Zhuowen and have a good adventure. After saying that, Lu Hantian laughed and came to Zhuowen's side. His right hand naturally patted Zhuowen's shoulder. Zhuowen quietly looked at Lu Hantian, who was laughing beside him, and the smiling people in the hall. His heart was filled with a touch of warmth. These people's eyes were filled with trust and dependence for him. In other words, he, Zhuowen, was already the pillar of support for these people. Chapter 1224. Divine Bramble Armor. Zhuowen stared at Lu Hantian, beside him with a gratified look in his eyes. He was well aware of Lu Hantian's talent. Back then, he had been extremely outstanding in the entire Azure Xian Empire. This time, he was prepared to bring Lu Hantian to the tomb. Perhaps Lu Hantian would be able to obtain his own destiny in the tomb. I want to go too. I want to go too. A clear voice suddenly rang out in the hall. Subsequently, Miao Elvi's petite figure arrived in front of Zhuowen like a bolt of lightning. Her pair of beautiful eyes stared closely at Zhuowen as she said, Big brother Zhuowen, the tomb sounds very interesting. Quickly bring me there. Zhuowen frowned when he heard that. Miao Elvi's cultivation was not high. Although she had broken through the shackles of the ultimate Emperor realm and reached the 4th Venerable realm after 15 years of cultivation, she was only at the Mystique Venerable realm. Such a cultivation was like an ant in Misery Sea. Any Misery Sea martialist could kill Miao Lv with a slap. Your cultivation is too low. This trip will be very dangerous. You must stay in the Azure Dragon Hall. Zhuowen shook his head. I don't want to. Big brother Zhuo, please bring me there. Miao Lv stomped her foot and said somewhat coquettishly. However, Zhuowen did not fall for this trick at all. His expression was grave as he said, The tomb is too dangerous. At that time, all the Emperor Realm practitioners in the Bitter Sea will gather there. The weakest among them will likely be much stronger than you. You will only be courting death if you go there. Miao Lv's eyes immediately turned red when she heard Zhuowen's stern shout. Traces of mist appeared in her eyes. Big brother Zhuo is the most annoying. Miao Lv shouted, and directly left the hall. At the same time, faint sobbing sounds could be heard from outside the hall. Zhuowen, aren't you being too ruthless? You still don't understand Miao Lu's thoughts. She didn't go with you because the emperor's tomb is interesting. It's purely because of you. Lu Hantian rubbed his head and grimaced. Zhuowen shrugged and said, I know that as well. But big brother Hantian, you don't know how terrifying the bitter sea is. If you knew, I'm afraid you would have rejected Miao Lu, that girl, to come with us. That place is too dangerous. Lu Hantian's eyes also became a little grave when he heard Zhuowen's cautious words. To be able to cause Zhuowen to be so afraid. It seemed that the bitter sea that Zhuowen spoke of was indeed a little frightening. Zhuowen, the three of us should follow them. Didn't you say that the emperor's tomb contained the heart of imperial power? This thing can allow us celestial venerables to directly advance to the imperial power realm. If the three of us can obtain the imperial power heart, perhaps we can save a lot of time in cultivation. 3 more figures walked out of the hall. They were Lve Tao, Luo Xing and Qing Lian. The one who spoke just now was Lve Tao. Whether it was Lve Tao, Qing Lian, or Luo Xing, their cultivations had all reached the peak of the celestial venerables. However, there was still a certain gap between them and the imperial power realm. If they could obtain the imperial power heart, they could indeed advance to the imperial power realm in a short period of time. After pondering for a moment, Zhuowen nodded and said, Brother Lve's words make sense. The emperor's tomb can be considered a great opportunity for all of you. However, you have to be extremely careful when you go to the emperor's tomb this time. After all, the number of experts in the Bitter Sea is not something the Qing Xian Empire can compare to. Hearing this, Lve Tao and the other two looked at each other and nodded heavily. Their eyes revealed joy. Let's return to the square of the Azure Dragon Hall first. As for Ryuka, let's develop in the Pang world first. Of course, you don't have to worry about the effect of the flow of time on your lifespan. Although everyone's time in the Pang world is 365 times that of the outside world, our lifespan is still calculated in terms of the time outside, Zhuowen said. Everyone in the hall nodded. Relief filled their eyes. This was what they had been worried about. Since Zhuowen had said that, they could relax. Zhuowen took out the blue dragon token. Soon after, he tapped it with his right hand. Immediately, the surface of the token emitted an extremely rich glow that enveloped Zhuowen's group. However, as the glow faded, Zhuowen's group also disappeared before everyone's eyes. Zhuowen, Lve Hantian, the Grand Demon Lord, Lve Tao, Luo Xing, and Qing Lian slowly landed on the square shrouded in mist. Aside from the Grand Demon Lord, Zhuowen's group of 5 were not surprised at all. The Grand Demon Lord looked around the Azure Dragon Hall. His eyes were filled with surprise. Soon after, he asked Zhuowen, Master, where is this place? The Azure Dragon Hall. Zhuowen gave a concise explanation of the Azure Dragon Hall. The more the Grand Demon Lord listened, the more shocked he became. He could not help but tremble. The Azure Dragon Hall was actually the residence of a saint, while the Pang world he resided in was only a miniature world created by the master of the Azure Dragon Hall. This was definitely quite a shock to the Tsang Dragon Taoist, who grew up in the Pang world. Master, is the upper realm in the Pang world also? The Grand Demon Lord seemed to think of something, so he asked again. Zhuowen nodded. That's also a miniature world created by the Tsang Dragon Taoist. However, it's of a higher level than the Pang world you reside in. The Grand Demon Lord fell completely silent when he heard that. The upper realm he had searched so hard for in the past was actually only a miniature world created by someone else. The Grand Demon Lord was filled with mixed feelings right now. Soon, his gaze fell on Zhuowen. From Zhuowen's words, he guessed that the young man in front of him seemed to have obtained the inheritance of the Azure Dragon Hall. In other words, Zhuowen would definitely be the master of the Azure Dragon Hall in the future. At that time, he would dominate the 3 great small worlds in the Azure Dragon Hall and the inheritance of the saints in the Azure Dragon Hall. When he thought of Zhuowen's identity, the Grand Demon Lord was no longer as opposed to becoming Zhuowen's servant. Instead, He felt rather smug because Zhuowen was the master of the entire Azure Dragon Hall. If he became the servant of the master of the Azure Dragon Hall, he would benefit quite a lot once Zhuowen took complete control of the Azure Dragon Hall. The instant Zhuowen's group landed on the square, the entire square began to shake intensely. Soon after, countless amounts of fog began to churn. Amidst the churning fog, an enormous illusory figure slowly agglomerated. The figure was the figure of a Taoist. He wore a feathered crown and feathered robes. He seemed otherworldly, and his eyes were filled with the sun, moon, and stars. He seemed so dazzling. Naturally, the figure was the Tsang Dragon Taoist's figure. At the same time, a terrifying surge of starlight descended from the dome above the square. The starlight condensed into a rather huge screen of light. There were rows of words on the screen of light. You have passed the second world. You have the right to choose an emperor's artifact. An indifferent voice boomed out like thunder. Lu Hantian and the others stared at the figure in fear. The pressure from the Tsang Dragon Taoist's figure was extremely intense and terrifying. It was the might of a saint. As it spread out, it faintly made them shudder. Zhuowen stared at the Tsang Dragon Taoist's figure and nodded slightly. Back then, he had the right to choose an emperor tier soul treasure after passing the first world. Now that he had passed the second world, he could naturally choose an emperor's artifact in the Azure Dragon Hall. If he could pass the third world, he would be able to completely control the Azure Dragon Hall. There were not many Emperor's artifacts in the Azure Dragon Hall. There were only 5 of them. However, these 5 were basically high-level Emperor's artifacts. Moreover, they were the best of the high-level Emperor's artifacts. They were of higher quality and stronger than ordinary high-level Emperor's artifacts. After all, the Emperor's artifacts that could be kept in the Azure Dragon Hall by a saint like the Tsang Dragon Taoist were naturally 1 in a million. These 5 Emperor's artifacts were the Gourd of Heaven and Earth, the Tai Chi Mysterious Gate, the Sky Burial 8 Spears, the Taisha Origin Sword, and the Thorny Divine Armor. Among them, the Tai Chi Mysterious Gate and the Thorny Divine Armor were defensive Emperor's artifacts, while the Sky Burial 8 Spears and the Taisha Origin Sword were offensive Emperor's artifacts, while the Gourd of Heaven and Earth was a special Emperor's artifact. Now that my Buddhist avatar and demonic Tao avatar have both advanced to the Emperor realm, their attacks can be considered extremely powerful. However, my original body is still at the peak of the Heavenly Master realm. It can be said that the most important original body is the weakest. Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. His gaze swept back and forth across the 5 Emperor's artifacts. In the end, his gaze fell on the Divine Thorny Armor and the Taiji Mysterious Gate. His original body was too weak, so he still planned to choose a defensive Emperor's artifact to protect his body. The Divine Thorny Armor was an inner armor made from poisonous vines and thorns in the abyss. After the inner armor was refined, a powerful divine inscription was drawn into it. It was said that the inner armor's surface contained extremely powerful toxins. Low-level Emperor Realm cultivators would definitely die if they touched it. Mid-level Emperor Realm cultivators might even be seriously injured. High-level Emperor Realm cultivators would also be in a sorry state because of the toxins. The Taiji Mysterious Gate was a giant gate that contained the power of Taiji Yin and Yang. Its defensive power was extremely abnormal. It was said that it could withstand a full-force attack from an invincible Emperor Realm cultivator. It could also completely withstand the attacks of ordinary high-level Emperor Realm cultivators. It had to be said that both the Divine Thorny Armor and the Taiji Mysterious Gate's defensive power had far exceeded Zhuowen's expectations. Therefore, Zhuowen was a little reluctant to part with these 2 Emperor's artifacts. After thinking about it, Zhuowen finally chose the Divine Thorny Armor. Firstly, the Divine Thorny Armor was an inner armor that could be worn under clothes. It had an extremely strong concealment ability. Outsiders would not be able to see the full appearance of the Divine Thorny Armor. Secondly, Zhuowen could wear the Armor of Thorns at any time. Even if he encountered a sneak attack, Zhuowen would not be afraid except for his head. For example, if he had the Armor of Thorns, he would not have needed to dodge the sneak attack from Jiuju. He would have been able to withstand Jiuju's killing blow. On the other hand, the Taiji mysterious gate needed to be activated. Unknowingly, it would take more time than the divine thorny armor. Therefore, Zhuowen ultimately chose the divine thorny armor. Have you chosen? The Tsang Dragon Taoist asked indifferently. Yes, the divine thorny armor. Chapter 1225. Instant kill. Looking at the black light before him, Zhuowen's eyes flashed. Within the black light, there was a black armor floating quietly. The surface of the armor was made up of countless black thorns. Around the thorns, there were traces of black gas. Zhuowen knew that the gas was extremely poisonous. Relax your mind. I will help you refine the divine thorns armor into your emperor weapon, Taoist Master Tsang Long said calmly. Zhuowen nodded and relaxed his mind. Taoist Master Tsang Long waved his sleeve, and a wave of energy swept out, enveloping Zhuowen. Then, the divine thorns armor entered Zhuowen's body. With a thought, Zhuowen's divine armor of thorns, which was covered with thorns, appeared on the surface of his body. Waves of terrifying poisonous gas lingered on the surface of his body like dark clouds, obscuring him from view. The divine thorns armor is an inner armor. You can hide it under your clothes, Taoist Master Tsang Long said calmly. Hearing that, Zhuowen's mind moved, and the divine armor of thorns on the surface of his body entered his body. With just a thought, the divine armor of thorns would appear on the surface of his body. It was very convenient. In addition to the terrifying defense and powerful poisonous gas on the surface of the divine thorns armor, Zhuowen believed that even a mid-level emperor would not be able to kill his body. When his body successfully entered the emperor realm, he would be able to unleash more of the divine thorns armor's power. Even a high-level emperor would find it difficult to kill him. Since you are the first trial taker to pass the second heaven, you have the right to mobilize the Azure Dragon skeleton outside the Azure Dragon Hall 3 times. If you want to completely control the Azure Dragon Hall, you will have to pass the third heaven. Taoist Tsang Long spoke again. With a wave of his sleeve, the enormous illusory figure directly collapsed, turning into clouds and mist that constantly lingered. The instant Taoist Tsang Long disappeared, Zhuowen's mind seemed to be connected with the entire Azure Dragon Hall. With regards to the entire Azure Dragon Hall, Zhuowen felt a sense of control. Zhuowen knew that this should be the right that the Azure Dragon Taoist had given him to control the Azure Dragon Hall. However, he could only use this right 3 times. After 3 times, if he wanted to control it again, he could only wait until he passed through the 3 layers of heaven and earth. Zhuowen, was that person just now the Tsang Long Taoist? He's still alive? Lu Hantian asked Zhuowen with shock in his eyes. Just now, the pressure emitted by the Tsang Long Taoist shadow was extremely terrifying, causing his heart to palpitate and his entire body to tremble. He knew that this was caused by the might of a saint. Zhuowen shook his head and said, to be more precise, the illusory figure just now should be a wisp of the Tsang Long Taoist's divine consciousness. As for whether he's still alive, I'm not too sure. Just a wisp of divine consciousness. Everyone present looked at each other with shock in their eyes. Just a wisp of divine consciousness had such a terrifying oppressive force. If the Tsang Long Taoist's real body came, wouldn't it be even more terrifying? After the shock, everyone regained their composure. They all looked at Zhuowen with a look of inquiry. Among them, Lu Hantian asked, Zhuowen, are we going out now? Zhuowen nodded. With a flip of his right hand, a Azure Dragon token appeared. At the same time, a spatial force enveloped Zhuowen and the others. Immediately after, they completely disappeared from the Azure Dragon Hall. At this moment, the Muqing County outside had already been occupied by the Qing Xian Empire's army. The mysterious blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master and the 2 4th-level emperors of the Blue Dragon Hall hovered silently in the air above the Muqing County. One of the Arcana Heavenly Masters frowned slightly. He asked the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master somewhat uncertainly, Master, we've been waiting outside for half a month. Is waiting like this really going to work? Who knows? Maybe Zhuowen has already been teleported to another place and escaped. Do you know more about formations than I do? The blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master glanced at the Arcana Heavenly Master and asked indifferently. I wouldn't dare. The Arcana Heavenly Master hurriedly bowed. His eyes were filled with fear. The blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master withdrew his gaze and said indifferently, "Since Zhuowen was teleported away from here, if he returns, he will definitely be nearby. It's already been half a month. Let's wait for another half a month. If Zhuowen still doesn't appear, we'll leave the Qingxian Empire and head to the Embittered Sea. We still have important matters to attend to there." The two Arcana Heavenly Masters nodded and bowed. Their eyes were filled with respect. They knew very well just how high the status of the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master was in the Blue Dragon Hall. He was not someone they could compare to. As a result, the two of them did not dare to disobey the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master's words. Suddenly, the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master's eyes narrowed slightly. His expression was naturally noticed by the two Arcana Heavenly Masters behind him. One of them asked in surprise, "Master, what is it?" "How brazen! That Zhuowen has actually come out," the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master murmured. The blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master muttered softly. Before the two green-robed men could react, two towering demonic chi surged towards them. Two terrifying figures shrouded in demonic chi shot towards them from behind the three of them. Boom! The blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master swung his sleeve. His terrifying mental energy turned into a sturdy barrier behind him. With a boom, the two beams of terrifying black energy were blocked by the sturdy barrier. A terrifying force radiated outwards. The expressions of the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master and the two Arcana Heavenly Masters changed slightly as they staggered backwards. Their gazes landed behind them, where 6 figures stood. The leader of the 6 figures was a black-robed young man. The young man's sharp eyes stared indifferently at the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master. "Zhuowen, you actually dare to come out?" The blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master narrowed his eyes. He stared closely at Zhuowen as his deep voice slowly rang out. The black-robed young man was naturally Zhuowen. His gaze also landed on the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master. An indifferent smile appeared on his face as he said, "Why wouldn't I dare to come out?" The blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master licked his lips and chuckled. "Since you're so eager to die, I'll fulfill your wish." With that, the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master wasted no more words. He took a step forward, and terrifying mental energy erupted from his Niwen Palace, forming a storm of mental energy around him. Wrapped in the storm of mental energy, he shot forward as a terrifying blur. "Demon Leader, stop him." Zhuowen ordered the Grand Demon Lord beside him indifferently. The Grand Demon Lord nodded and took a step forward. Monstrous demonic chi surged out and whistled through the air, making his hair flutter wildly. The Grand Demon Lord was currently a 3rd-level Demon Emperor. His battle prowess was even more terrifying than Zhuowen's demonic Dao clone. After all, he was originally a high-level Demon Emperor. His battle prowess was extraordinary. He might not be the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master's opponent, but he was more than capable of stopping him. 3rd-level Demon Emperor? The blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master could not help but murmur. He had never thought that Zhuowen would bring someone as powerful as the Grand Demon Lord with him. Although he was only a 3rd-level Demon Emperor, his battle prowess was probably much more terrifying than regular 4th-level Demon Emperors. "The two of you capture Zhuowen." Although the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master was surprised by the presence of a 3rd-level Demon Emperor from the Grand Demon Lord, he did not take it too seriously. With his strength as an Arcana Heavenly Master, there was no need for him to fear the Grand Demon Lord. The two green-robed men nodded slightly. Immediately, 2 pairs of sharp eyes stared intently at Zhuowen in front of them, as they simultaneously revealed a ferocious smile. This was because they discovered that Zhuowen's presence was still only at the peak of the Heavenly Exalt level. To them, he was only an ant-like existence. With their strength, capturing Zhuowen would be a piece of cake. Lu Hantian beside Zhuowen was also a 3rd-level Demon Emperor, but the 2 azure-robed men were 4th-level Demon Emperors. They did not take the Lu Hantian seriously at all. Boom, boom, boom. The blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master and the Grand Demon Lord immediately clashed. Their battle was extremely intense, but the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master was clearly not simple. He actually managed to suppress the Grand Demon Lord. However, the Grand Demon Lord was no pushover. After all, he was a high-level demon emperor. It was just that he had yet to recover, so his battle prowess was extremely terrifying. As a result, the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master could sense how difficult the Grand Demon Lord was to deal with during the battle. He frowned slightly. Although he wanted to finish off the Grand Demon Lord as soon as possible, the latter was extremely slippery. The latter knew that it was very unlikely for him to be the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master's opponent in a head-on clash, so he chose to use a roundabout strategy. Although the Grand Demon Lord was difficult to deal with, the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master was not in a hurry. The two azure-robed men were 4th-level demon emperors. They were more than enough to capture Zhuowen. Die! The speed of the two green-robed men was very fast, and they arrived in front of Zhuowen in an instant. Soon after, the two of them unleashed extremely terrifying attacks, which rumbled as they smashed towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen stood quietly at the same spot. He raised his head and looked at the two attacks that were crushing down. A slight arc appeared at the corners of his mouth. You're actually smiling when you're about to die. I think you've lost your mind. The two azure-robed men also noticed the curve on the corners of Zhuowen's mouth. They were startled at first, but soon after, they loudly mocked him. Demon body, have a good massacre. Zhuowen remained unmoved. He licked his lips as monstrous demonic qi surged out of his body. The demonic qi descended and turned into a terrifying demon body. Zhuowen's eyes were eerily cold. He held a demonic slaughter blade in his hand. He took a step forward and swung the demonic slaughter blade horizontally. Destruction of life. An indifferent voice resounded across the sky. Demonic clouds covered the entire sky, causing the entire Muqing County to descend into a dark and lightless state. Above the demonic clouds, a black and red blade shadow descended and smashed onto the bodies of the two green-robed men. Ugh! Ugh! Chapter 1226. Filled with doubts, the blue-robed Arcana Heaven Master continued to tangle with the Grand Demon Lord in a playful manner. His mental energy was extremely terrifying. Although the Grand Demon Lord was extremely powerful, he still struggled to break through the blue-robed Arcana Heaven Master's mental energy defenses. However, the Grand Demon Lord was once a high-ranked demon emperor. He was extremely slippery. Although he was at a disadvantage in this battle, the blue-robed Arcana Heaven Master was unable to do anything to him. That Zhuowen should have been captured by now. The blue-robed Arcana Heaven Master frowned slightly at how difficult it was to deal with the Grand Demon Lord. However, he did not mind too much. His target was Zhuowen in the first place. As long as he captured Zhuowen, defeating the Grand Demon Lord would only be a matter of time. Ugh! Ugh! When the blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master's indifferent gaze landed on the battle between the two azure-robed men and Zhuowen, his body suddenly trembled. He was stunned on the spot because the two azure-robed men, with terrifying presences, had actually been reduced to a bloody mist by a single slash of the blade. They could not be any more dead than that. Dead? The blue-robed Arcana Heaven Master's eyes narrowed to the size of needles. He stared intently at the figure that had killed the two green-robed men. This person had strange black-red hair, and his eyes alternated between black and red. He appeared extremely strange and terrifying. Another avatar? The blue-robed Arcana Heaven Master quickly noticed Zhuowen's actual body nearby. Coupled with the fact that the demonic body's appearance was so similar to Zhuowen's, the blue-robed Arcana Heaven Master knew that this young man with monstrous demonic aura was very likely Zhuowen's avatar. However, what surprised the blue-robed Arcanist was that Zhuowen's external avatar should be a Buddhist avatar. Why was it a demon avatar that appeared in front of him now? Moreover, the cultivation of this demon avatar was extremely terrifying. It had reached the third-layer demon emperor. Coupled with the unexpected attack just now, it was no wonder that the two green-robed men were killed by Zhuowen before they could even react. Third Heaven Demon Sovereign and Third Heaven Emperor Realm were two completely different concepts. Demon sovereigns were much stronger than emperors of the same level. Moreover, Zhuowen's demon Dao clone cultivated an extremely powerful supreme demon battle art. Zhuowen's demon Dao clone was even more terrifying than ordinary demon sovereigns. Killing a fourth heaven emperor wasn't a problem at all. It even had the strength to fight a fifth heaven emperor. Moreover, the two green-robed men only saw that Zhuowen's main body was only at the peak of the Empyrean realm, so they didn't guard against Zhuowen's move at all. Therefore, they were easily destroyed by the demonic avatar. Boom! While the blue-robed Arcanist Master was stunned, the Grand Demon Lord, this old fox, was rather sinister. He moved strangely and instantly appeared in front of the blue-robed Arcanist Heavenly Master. He struck out with his palm, and the Grand Demon Battle Chi transformed into an extremely terrifying Grand Demon Halberd that shot forward like an arrow. Thud thud thud. The blue-robed Arcanist Heavenly Master hadn't expected the Grand Demon Lord to launch a sneak attack at this time. Therefore, he was in a rather sorry state as he blocked the Grand Demon Halberd. He retreated several hundred steps and waved his sleeve. Countless mental energy storms gathered in front of him, blocking the incoming Grand Demon Halberd. What's going on with this Zhuowen? He's only disappeared for half a month, so how did his strength increase so much? And he even brought out another third heaven demon emperor. This guy, the blue-robed Arcanist Heavenly Master, became extremely stern. He discovered that Zhuowen had quite a few secrets. Coupled with the fact that the Azure Emperor had said that this person possessed an extremely powerful dragon soul and was a descendant of the Ryuka, the blue-robed Arcanist Heavenly Master's eyes flickered. He knew that the teleportation formation back then was probably not simple. He wondered where Zhuowen's group had gone half a month ago. Their strength had actually increased by leaps and bounds. The demonic avatar landed beside Zhuowen after killing the two green-robed individuals. Zhuowen's actual body took a step forward and arrived beside the Grand Devil Master. Both of his eyes stared at the blurry face of the blue-robed arcane Heavenly Master in front of him as he coldly said, "Who exactly are you? Why don't you show your true appearance?" The blue-robed Arcanist Heavenly Master laughed softly and said, "If you tell me what happened to you in the past half a month, I'll tell you my identity. What do you think, Zhuowen?" Zhuowen, on the other hand, sneered again and again. This blue-robed Arcana Heavenly Master was truly wishful thinking. The Azure Dragon Palace was Zhuowen's greatest secret. If he revealed it, then he, Zhuowen, would definitely be targeted by the big shots of the Nine Nether Realm. At that time, it was unlikely that he, Zhuowen, would possess such a secret, and it would be divided up sooner or later. The blue-robed Arcanist Heavenly Master actually wanted to use his identity to exchange for information about the Azure Dragon Hall. Zhuowen was not stupid. How could he possibly agree? The blue-robed Arcanist Heavenly Master also noticed the cold smile on Zhuowen's face. He knew that it was very unlikely that Zhuowen would reveal it, so he shook his head and said with some pity, "My identity is actually quite helpful to you. It's a pity that you don't plan on exchanging it, so forget it." With that, the blue-robed Arcanist Heavenly Master waved his sleeve, and a shuttle-like object appeared beneath his feet. Terrifying mental energy surged out and acted on the shuttle-like object. An extremely long pillar of blue gas shot out from the back of the shuttle-like object. With a swish, it shot off into the distance. "Zhuowen, we'll meet again very soon because you're still quite useful to me, haha." The blue-robed Arcanist Heavenly Master's loud laughter rang out from the horizon the moment he shot off. "Master, should we give chase?" the Grand Demon Lord asked as he looked at Zhuowen. Zhuowen shook his head and said, "That person is unfathomable. Even if we catch up to him, it'll be difficult for us to take him down. Moreover, I've discovered that he hasn't used his full strength at all. It's like he's toying with us." With that, Zhuowen's gaze locked onto the black that was moving further and further away. Many doubts arose in his heart. What did that person mean by that last sentence? They would meet again very soon, so where would they meet again? Could it be? A gleam of light flashed through Zhuowen's eyes when he thought of that. He knew that it was very likely that the Arcanist Heavenly Master planned on heading to the tomb as well. When that happened, he would probably run into him again. "He's coming to the tomb as well," Zhuowen murmured softly. His gaze became much colder. "Zhuowen, What should the Qingxian Empire do? Lu Hantian arrived beside Zhuowen and asked softly. The Qingxian Empire. The Azure Emperor was already dead, and the Blue Dragon Hall would definitely not be interested in such a remote place. From a certain perspective, the Qingxian Empire was without a master. I plan to send someone to become the new emperor of the Qingxian Empire. Zhuowen pondered for a moment before spitting out these words. Actually, the Qingxian Empire was not of much use to Zhuowen, who had the Azure Dragon Hall. However, Zhuowen was still trapped in the 18th floor of the Imperial City's prison. If there was no one to guard him, Zhuowen would not be at ease. Therefore, he planned to choose a trusted aide from the Ryuka to oversee the Qingxian Empire. Lu Hantian nodded and said, If you want to oversee the Qingxian Empire, you must be a cultivator of the sovereign realm. Zhuowen nodded and said, I've already considered this matter. As he spoke, Zhuowen took out the Azure Dragon token and summoned a figure from the Azure Dragon Hall. This person was not very old and had 2 long white eyebrows. He looked extremely strange. He was one of the 5 servants of Zhuowen, by May. All 5 of Zhuowen's servants had reached the sovereign realm. Among them, Xiang was far ahead and had reached the 2nd Heaven Emperor realm. Zhuowen was quite satisfied with their cultivation progress. Master, Bai Mei bowed respectfully. Bai Mei, I want you to oversee the Qingxian Empire and become the new emperor of the empire. You will protect my father, Zhuo Xiaotian, who is in the great restrictive spell formation. Zhuowen said plainly. Bai Mei was stunned and hesitated. He was not stupid. The flow of time in the Azure Dragon Hall was extremely fast. In addition, the Yuan Qi in the Azure Dragon Hall was many times denser than in the Qingxian Empire. If he stayed in the Qingxian Empire, the gap between him and the other Ryuka would be widened very quickly. This was why he was so hesitant. Oversee the Qingxian Empire, and I will remember your contribution. When I return, I will help you to break through to the middle stage of the sovereign realm. Do you agree? Zhuowen said calmly. Bai Mei's heart skipped a beat. He knew very well that although Zhuowen seemed to be asking for his opinion, his tone was commanding. If he did not agree, he would leave a bad impression on Zhuowen. At that time, he would not be valued. If he agreed, although his cultivation level would be surpassed by the other Ryuka for a short period of time, Zhuowen would help him to break through to the middle stage of the sovereign realm. He would also be valued by Zhuowen. Therefore, after thinking for a while, Bai Mei agreed without hesitation. Zhuowen nodded as a wisp of an arc appeared on the corners of his mouth. He said, Very good. If you're able to satisfy me, then I won't treat you unfairly at that time. Hearing this, Bai Mei revealed an excited expression. Zhuowen's promise was quite heavy. After all, he knew that Zhuowen would very likely inherit the saint's inheritance, the Azure Dragon Palace. In other words, Zhuowen had a high chance of entering the saint stage. The sage was a legendary figure. If he could get the attention of such a figure, Bai Mei knew that he would have a meteoric rise. Therefore, the last bit of unhappiness in his heart about being in charge of the Qingxian Empire disappeared. Let's go. Let's make a trip to the Imperial City. After saying that, Zhuowen waved his sleeve and took out the black cloud sail. Rolling black clouds rose into the sky and broke through the sky. Soon, they arrived at the Imperial City. The Imperial City was much quieter. Although there were many warriors in the city, most of them were in a state of fear. After all, half a month ago, the ruler of the Qingxian Empire, Emperor Qing, was killed in front of their eyes. Many warriors were worried that Zhuowen, who killed Emperor Qing, would come to the Imperial City to seek revenge. He Yunfan quickly landed outside the Imperial City's dungeon. The guards here had long since dispersed, making the place look like a desolate land. Chapter 1227. Back to the college inside the endless flames. Zhuo Xiaotian slowly opened his eyes. He raised his head and stared at Zhuowen, who was outside the grand formation, with a smile on his face. Father, I don't have the ability to save you now. Zhuowen said dejectedly. Zhuo Xiaotian shook his head and said, Zhuowen, you don't have to blame yourself. How old are you? There aren't many people at your age who are comparable to the Emperor realm. Your talent is even greater than Father's. As for this grand formation, Father will naturally break it. As long as Father is given some time, Father will smoothly comprehend the Saint Rune Law and become an invincible Emperor Lord. Zhuo Xiaoyan's eyes flickered. He was only a little bit away from becoming an invincible Emperor Lord. In fact, with Zhuo Xiaoyan's current cultivation and accumulation, it wouldn't be difficult for him to become a half-saint. However, Zhuo Xiaotian wasn't willing to become a half-saint directly. He knew that if he became a half-saint like this, he would at most be an ordinary half-saint. His future achievements wouldn't last long. Only by becoming an invincible Emperor Lord would his potential be deep enough. When he became a half-saint or a saint, his battle strength would definitely surpass that of an ordinary half-saint or saint. Hearing this, Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He didn't doubt Zhuo Xiaotian's words at all. After all, the latter's talent was there for all to see. He knew that Zhuo Xiaotian had been imprisoned in the Imperial City's dungeon before he reached the Emperor realm. 20 years had passed, and Zhuo Xiaotian's cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. He had reached the 9th layer Emperor realm, and was only a step away from becoming an invincible Emperor Lord. Zhuowen believed that if Zhuo Xiaotian were to cultivate in the Azure Dragon Hall, his progress would only be faster if he had been able to achieve such a proud result in 20 years of time in the dark dungeon of the Imperial City. I might be able to find the Saint Rune Law in the Emperor's tomb. If I can find it, I'll give it to Father, and let him comprehend it faster to become an invincible Emperor Lord. Zhuowen muttered to himself as he looked at Zhuo Xiaotian in the grand formation. In fact, when Zhuowen entered the Azure Dragon Palace, he had guessed that the Azure Dragon Palace might contain the Saint Rune Law. However, he couldn't find any traces of the Saint Rune Law, even after searching inside and out. He knew that he hadn't completely controlled the Azure Dragon Palace, so he wasn't qualified to obtain the Azure Dragon Taoist Saint Rune Law. According to Blackie, the Tsang Dragon Taoist was probably an extremely powerful saint, so the Saint Rune Law he comprehended should also be quite powerful. If he could really obtain the Saint Rune Law of the Tsang Dragon Taoist, it would definitely be beneficial to Zhuowen. Senior, Lu Hantian, and the others came over while Zhuowen and Lu Hantian were talking. Among them, Lu Hantian cupped his hands respectfully to Zhuo Xiaotian. Zhuo Xiaotian was the one who guided him in the Imperial City's dungeon and helped him successfully break through to the Emperor realm. Therefore, in a sense, Zhuo Xiaotian could be considered Lu Hantian's half-master. Lu Hantian and Elder Shiyuan already knew about Zhuo Xiaotian's identity during the battle in the Imperial City. In particular, Zhuo Xiaotian was able to successfully break through to the 9th level Emperor realm in the Dark Imperial City's dungeon. He was extremely impressed. Zhuowen, he's your father? Lu Yitao, Qing Lian, and Luo Xing looked at each other and asked in unison. Yes, he's my father, Zhuo Xiaotian, Zhuowen said calmly. So strong. Grand Demon Lord stared at Zhuo Xiaotian in the great restrictive spell formation with fear, and muttered in a low voice. After all, he was once a high-level demon emperor, but he still felt a strong sense of oppression when facing Zhuo Xiaotian. He knew that even if he was at his peak, he would most likely be defeated by this man in front of him. This man was very close to becoming a sage-to-be. Father, we plan to go to the Bitter Sea Emperor's tomb this time. We want to find an opportunity to improve ourselves there. Zhuowen turned around and looked at Zhuo Xiaotian. At the same time, he briefly explained the situation of the Emperor's tomb, so that Zhuo Xiaotian had a little understanding of the Emperor's tomb. Rewards are often accompanied by danger. There may be many rare treasures in the Emperor's tomb, but I'm afraid it's also very dangerous. You'd better be careful, Zhuo Xiaotian said worriedly. Zhuowen nodded and said solemnly, Don't worry, I will. After chatting for a while, Zhuowen left the Qing Xian Empire with Lu Hantian and the others, leaving Bai Mei to guard the imperial capital. Of course, he would also spread Ryuka's influence to the Qing Xian Empire. Be careful, Zhuo Xiaotian silently stared at the figure that disappeared into the horizon. His figure slowly fell into the bottomless darkness below. After leaving the Qing Xian Empire, Zhuowen and the others rushed to the desolate ancient city, After buying 5 tickets in the desolate ancient city, they rushed to the auspicious God Island without stopping. After spending about a month, they finally arrived at the auspicious God Island. Zhuowen arranged for Lu Hantian and the others to stay in an inn in the main city. Then he went straight to the academy. It had already been 2 months since he left the academy, and there was only a month left before the opening of the emperor's tomb. After entering the academy, Zhuowen could clearly feel that the atmosphere in the academy had become much more excited. Many students who passed by had eager expressions in their eyes. Obviously, they were all planning to show off their skills in the emperor's tomb. After returning to the academy, Zhuowen did not go to the dormitory of the new students. Instead, he went to the area where the fragrant ink pavilion was located. Before he left, he had asked Moyan Wuxiang to take good care of Jianan Gatha, Emo Lingtian and Xian Xing. Junior Zhuowen, what a coincidence! Zhuowen had just entered the fragrant ink pavilion's area when a rather familiar voice was heard. Zhuowen tilted her head to look, and immediately noticed that Cheng Dong, who was dressed in a green robe, was slowly walking over with a refined smile on his face. Cheng Dong was one of the higher-ups of the fragrant ink pavilion. When he entered the outer court assessment, Cheng Dong had helped him. Therefore, his relationship with Cheng Dong was quite good. Senior Cheng Dong, I'm here to look for Miss Wuxiang. I wonder if she's here? Zhuowen asked with a faint smile. Cheng Dong nodded and said, follow me. The pavilion master knows that if you return to the academy, you will definitely come back to look for her. After saying that, Cheng Dong lifted his feet and walked towards the depths of the fragrant ink pavilion. Zhuowen also followed behind him unhurriedly. The area of the fragrant ink pavilion was quite large. There were dozens of pavilions and pavilions inside. There were also many members of the fragrant ink pavilion. They were all wearing black and white uniforms. On the way, many members of the fragrant ink pavilion smiled and greeted Cheng Dong. The latter also greeted them one by one. His attitude was so good that it was impeccable. When they approached a courtyard, Zhuowen heard the faint sound of a guqin. The clear sound of the guqin was like a high mountain and flowing water. It filled Zhuowen's heart, causing Zhuowen to involuntarily relax his body and mind. He fell into the artistic conception of the guqin music. In the artistic conception, Zhuowen discovered that he had become a bird, flying freely in the sky. When the two of them arrived at the courtyard, the pleasant sound of the guqin came to an abrupt stop. Soon after, Zhuowen regained his senses. His gaze fell on the courtyard. In the center of the courtyard stood a white jade pavilion that was nearly 10 feet tall. In the pavilion, a graceful woman in a long dress sat quietly in front of the guqin. Her delicate hands were gently placed on the guqin. You've come. The woman slowly lifted her head, revealing an exquisite face that was like a porcelain doll. The corners of her mouth curled into a beautiful arc. A gentle voice sounded, like a cool breeze, giving people a comfortable feeling. This woman was naturally the pavilion master of the fragrant ink pavilion, Moyan Wuxiang. Zhuowen nodded his head. Soon after, his gaze fell on the 4 figures standing not far from the courtyard. These 4 people were the ones that Zhuowen was looking for: Jianan, Gatha, Emo Lingtian and Xian Xing. The 4 of them seemed to have just regained their senses from the guqin music. When they noticed Zhuowen, who had appeared in the courtyard, their eyes revealed an excited expression. Big brother Zhuo, you've returned quite quickly. Jianan giggled and hurriedly ran in front of Zhuowen. She sized up the latter and said with a smile. Although Gatha, Emo Lingtian and Xian Xing did not speak, the deep concern in their eyes was keenly captured by Zhuowen. Clearly, their feelings were similar to Jianan's. It was just that the way they expressed it was different from Jianan's. I returned to the Qing Xian Empire to deal with some trivial matters. There's nothing much to do, Zhuowen said with a smile. Zhuowen, you're here for the emperor's tomb, right? Moyan Wuxiang suddenly asked. Zhuowen nodded his head and said, yes. There should be less than a month before the emperor's tomb opens. When are we leaving for the emperor's tomb? Moyan Wuxiang shook his head and said, there's no rush. The emperor's tomb is not particularly far from the excellent Spirit Island. We can leave half a month in advance. Hearing this, Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He nodded his head and said, "You're right. Didn't you say that the Unvoiced Sound Pavilion's pavilion master, Qing Yin, was also planning to come? Why don't I see her? She's busy with some trivial matters in the Unvoiced Sound Pavilion. I'll hand her over in half a month. At that time, we'll go to the Emperor's tomb together. There's strength in numbers. This way we can share many things," Moyan Wuxiang said with a smile. "Since there's still half a month, please prepare a suite for us. Half a month later, we'll follow you to the Emperor's tomb." Zhuowen nodded his head and said. Moyan Wuxiang nodded his head and said, "Okay, I'll immediately send someone to prepare a room for you. However, I want to remind everyone that this trip to the Emperor's tomb should be filled with danger. If you're not confident, I feel that everyone shouldn't participate." Zhuowen and the others naturally nodded their heads. Soon after, they were pulled away by the servants prepared by Moyan Wuxiang to prepare a room. Chapter 1228. Sun Shuttle. Currently, the Demon Dao avatar was Zhuowen's most powerful avatar. His cultivation was at the third heaven demon emperor realm, and his combat strength was comparable to a fifth heaven demon emperor. If this avatar was well hidden, Zhuowen would be more confident in his trip to the emperor's tomb. Use the 100 transformation divine art to change the appearance of the Demon Dao avatar. Zhuowen looked at the Demon Dao avatar and silently circulated the 100 transformation divine art in his body. Of course, this cultivation technique was not targeted at his body, but the Demon Dao avatar. Sizzle, sizzle. The Demon Dao avatar's face began to change gradually. In the end, it turned into a young man with a cold and stern face. Moreover, there was a gloomy aura emitting from his body that gave people an uncomfortable feeling. The Demon Dao avatar revealed a strange smile. It turned into a demonic eye and entered the depths of Zhuowen's forehead. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes and muttered, "After leaving Excellent God Island, I will secretly release the Demon Dao avatar and let it enter the Emperor's tomb as a rogue cultivator." As time passed, the atmosphere in the academy became more and more stagnant. During this period of time, many students bought tickets to the islands near the Emperor's tomb. Half a month later, the Dean and Elder Wuxia were also ready to leave the Emperor's tomb. That is, Master Mufeng's sun shuttle? On this day, a blazing sun slowly rose in the sky above the Academy's arcane tower. If one looked closely, they would see a streamlined shuttle floating silently in the middle of the blazing sun. This blazing shuttle was extremely famous in the Academy. It was called the Sun Shuttle. Everyone knew that Master Mufeng had created the Sun Moon Shuttle, a transportation tool that could freely travel through the Sea of Bitterness. However, the Sun Moon Shuttle had too many limitations. It could only accommodate 2 people at most. This was the biggest drawback. However, the functions of the Sun Shuttle were similar to the Sun Moon Shuttle. The only difference was that the Sun Shuttle could accommodate dozens of people. Furthermore, its speed was many times faster than the boundless sailboat in the ancient city of Desolation. It was Master Mufeng's proudest creation. Moreover, it was said that there was only one Sun Shuttle in existence. After all, the requirements to create the Sun Shuttle were too strict. It was impossible to mass-produce it. Zhuowen slowly walked out of the courtyard. He also noticed the Sun Shuttle in the sky. At this moment, Jianan Gatha, Emil Lingtian and Xianxing also came out of the courtyard. Even Moyan Wuxiang and Qing Yin had also arrived at the courtyard. Looks like the headmaster and the others are about to set off as well. It's said that the Sun Shuttle is extremely fast, and it only takes 3 days to reach the Emperor's tomb. I really want to go up and take a look. Jianan muttered in a low voice, somewhat envious. Zhuowen patted Jianan's head and said with a smile, "Perhaps there will be a chance." At the same time, Zhuowen also nodded slightly at Moyan Wuxiang and Qing Yin. In 2 months, Moyan Wuxiang and Qing Yin's cultivation had improved. However, there was still some distance between them and the Emperor realm. This time, if they could obtain the Emperor's heart in the Emperor's tomb, it wouldn't be difficult for them to enter the Emperor realm. On the Sun Shuttle, Master Mufeng stood quietly at the bow of the ship. Behind him, Headmaster Moyan Bai Yen and Elder Wuxia stood side by side on the deck. Behind them, there were 6 figures standing quietly. 5 of them were the inner courtyard geniuses that Elder Huaxia had brought along. The 6th one was somewhat unexpected. It was the number 1 on the Heavenly Master list, Xiaoyu. The Sun Shuttle was Master Mu Feng's proudest creation. It wasn't something that just anyone could board. Moyan Bai Yen, Elder Huaxia, and the other 5 inner courtyard geniuses had extraordinary statuses. It was reasonable for them to be invited by Master Mu Feng. However, although Xiaoyu was the number 1 on the Heavenly Master list, he wasn't an Emperor Realm warrior. Many people were puzzled that he could board the Sun Shuttle. Zhuowen, Xiaoyu made a breakthrough half a month ago. He is now a first-level Emperor Realm warrior. He is also the only first-level Emperor Realm warrior among the outer courtyard disciples. Just like Sister Chen Shui, I'm afraid that he will soon be brought into the inner courtyard by Elder Huaxia and become an official disciple of Sky Capital Peak. Moyan Wushang suddenly said softly, "Oh, he has made a breakthrough." Zhuowen was slightly surprised. No wonder Xiaoyu was able to board the Sun Shuttle. It turned out that he had made a breakthrough. As the only Emperor Realm warrior in the outer courtyard, he was indeed qualified to board the Sun Shuttle. Master Mu Feng stood at the bow of the shuttle and looked down at the academy. His gaze fell on the courtyard where Zhuowen was. A smile appeared on his face as he said to Zhuowen, "Zhuowen, you should board as well." When these words were spoken, many people in the academy raised their eyebrows in succession. The rumor about Zhuowen and Master Mu Feng having an extraordinary relationship had already spread out when Zhuowen and Evil Moon had fought on the duel arena. However, the majority of people only thought that this was a false rumor and did not take it to heart. However, it seemed that this was not a rumor, but a fact. Master Mu Feng's relationship with Zhuowen was indeed not ordinary. Otherwise, he wouldn't have directly invited Zhuowen to board the Sun Shuttle. In an instant, Zhuowen became the focus of everyone's attention. Even the dean, Elder Huaxia, and the others on the Sun Shuttle looked at Zhuowen. Xiaoyu's eyes emitted an extremely cold light as he stared at Zhuowen. Back then, when Zhuowen was registered as an honorary disciple of the inner courtyard, he had been defeated in front of everyone. This was a great humiliation for him. Therefore, his hatred for Zhuowen could only be described as monstrous. This was especially so when he saw Master Mu Feng personally invite Zhuowen. This caused the flames of jealousy in his heart to burn even brighter. Zhuowen nodded. He wasn't too surprised that Master Mu Feng would invite him to board the Sun Shuttle. Back when he repaired the river diagram array in the Arcane Tower, Master Mu Feng's attitude towards him was a little strange. Or rather, Master Mu Feng seemed to treat Zhuowen a little too well. Originally, Zhuowen didn't have any doubts about this. However, as time passed, he realized that something was wrong. However, Master Mu Feng was an arcane heavenly master after all. Such an existence was much stronger than Zhuowen. There didn't seem to be anything on Zhuowen that Master Mu Feng would covet. Therefore, although Zhuowen was puzzled, he didn't pay too much attention to it. Master Mu Feng, Zhuowen is only at the Heavenly Venerate realm. Logically speaking, he shouldn't be qualified to board the Sun Shuttle. Wouldn't Master Mu Feng sully the Sun Shuttle by inviting such a guy? An ambiguous voice slowly sounded, causing Zhuowen's eyes to emit a cold light. He turned his head to look at Evil Moon and said indifferently, "You said that I'm not qualified. Are you saying that you're qualified?" Master Mu Feng didn't say anything. He just watched silently. He didn't answer or interfere. Evil Moon sneered and said, "I've already advanced to the Imperial Power Realm half a month ago. Moreover, I'll soon become an official disciple of the Inner Yard. Do you think that I'm not qualified? Since you said that I'm not qualified, do you dare to fight with me? A life and death battle. Life and death are up to fate. If you can kill me, then what you said should be true. I, Zhuowen, am indeed not qualified. Even death can't wipe out my crimes. However, if you're killed by me, then what you said is nonsense. You're the one who's not qualified," Zhuowen said indifferently. As soon as he said this, many people in the college gasped. Zhuowen was really bold. He actually challenged Evil Moon to a life and death battle. They just didn't know if Evil Moon would accept the challenge. After looking at Zhuowen for a while, Everyone's eyes fell on Evil Moon, whose face was gloomy. They wanted to see if Evil Moon would agree to Zhuo Wen's request for a life-and-death duel. Evil Moon's eyes narrowed slightly, but his heart trembled. He had already experienced how terrifying Zhuo Wen's combat strength was 2 months ago. At that time, not only had Zhuo Wen defeated him, but he had also defeated the genius of the inner yard Lan Zhu. Lan Zhu was also a first-level Great Emperor Realm expert. Moreover, his combat strength was stronger than an ordinary first-level Great Emperor Realm expert. However, he was still defeated by Zhuo Wen, let alone Evil Moon, who had just advanced to the Great Emperor Realm. What? You don't dare to accept the challenge? Zhuo Wen's tone carried a hint of mockery, which made Evil Moon's face even gloomier. However, he surprisingly didn't reply. Such a reaction caused many students in the college to discuss spiritedly. They looked at Evil Moon with strange gazes. They had heard that before Evil Moon had advanced to the Great Emperor Realm, he had been defeated by Zhuo Wen. Now Evil Moon had advanced to the Great Emperor Realm, and Zhuo Wen was still at the peak of the Heavenly Master Realm. However, in the face of the latter's challenge, Evil Moon began to hesitate. Evil Moon's reaction naturally caused an uproar in the hearts of many students. You don't even dare to accept the challenge of a peak Heavenly Master. You're worthy of being the former #1 genius on the Heavenly Master list, and now an official disciple of Tiandu Peak. When Zhuo Wen's mocking words left his mouth, Evil Moon's gaze changed slightly. He clenched his fists tightly and stared at Zhuo Wen. However, he still didn't step forward. Thinking of Lan Zhu's failure back then, Evil Moon didn't dare to take the gamble. His life and death were up to fate. He knew that once he agreed, either he or Zhuo Wen would die. In addition to Zhuo Wen's unbridled tone, Evil Moon didn't dare to gamble with his life. After all, he had advanced to the Imperial Realm and had the qualifications to become an official disciple of the Inner Yard. He didn't need to gamble with his life with Zhuo Wen. Alright. We're all geniuses of the college. Let's not quarrel over this matter. Since Master Mu Feng has personally invited you, Zhuo Wen, come on up, the college chief said with a smile. Zhuo Wen nodded. Then he glanced at Jia Nan Gatha and the others and said, I wonder if I can bring my friends on the Sun Shuttle? Master Mu Feng calmly glanced at Jia Nan, Gatha, and the others beside Zhuo Wen. His eyes flickered as he said, Sure, come on up. Zhuo Wen was stunned. He didn't expect Master Mu Feng to be so easy to talk to. He actually agreed to let him bring Jia Nan and the others on the Sun Shuttle. He had a good impression of Master Mu Feng. He nodded and led the excited Jia Nan and the others onto the Sun Shuttle, under the envious gazes of countless students. Moyan Wuxiang and Qingyin also boarded the Sun Shuttle after Zhuo Wen, because of the college chief. Let's go now. Chapter 1229. Black Wind Island. The howling sea breeze brushed past his face and blew up Zhuo Wen's dense black short hair. Zhuo Wen stood silently on the deck and looked down at the deep and pitch-black surface of the Sea of Misery, and his gaze flickered endlessly. The monstrous and enormous black waves that casually gushed out from the surface of the sea were like a shapeless hand in the darkness that grabbed the hearts of everyone. However, when these huge black waves crashed onto the surface of the Sun Shuttle, the surface of the Sun Shuttle would emit a blazing light. If one were to take a closer look, one would be able to see that there were complicated runes within the light. This was the defensive Yuan array that Grandmaster Mu Feng had drawn. He must have spent a lot of precious materials to create such a powerful defense. After all, the towering black waves couldn't shake the Sun Shuttle at all. Even Zhuo Wen, who was on the deck, didn't feel the Sun Shuttle shaking. It was extremely stable. The 5 geniuses of the inner courtyard, standing on the other side of the deck, looked at Zhuo Wen with unfriendly gazes, especially Lan Zhu. He didn't even bother to hide the murderous glint in his eyes. When Zhuo Wen had defeated him, he had lost all his face. The other 4 geniuses were Lan Zhu's senior and junior brothers. Naturally, they didn't like Zhuo Wen. With Zhuo Wen's perception, he naturally felt the unfriendly gazes of the 5 geniuses. However, he didn't care too much. The strongest among the 5 geniuses should be the white-clothed man called Bai Yu. His cultivation was around the 4th level of the Emperor realm. Lan Zhu was the weakest among the 5, only at the 1st level of the Emperor realm. Although Bai Yu didn't like Zhuowen, he didn't show it. Or rather, he didn't care too much about Zhuowen. After all, Zhuowen was only a peak heavenly venerate. Even if he had the strength to defeat Lan Zhu, Bai Yu wouldn't pay too much attention to him. After all, he was a genius of Sky Capital Peak, and a mid-level Emperor Realm expert. His horizons were much higher than Lan Zhu's. After Zhuowen boarded the Sun Shuttle, he used a communication jade talisman to contact Lu Hantian, the Grand Demon Lord, and the other 4 who were still in the main city. They were to head to the shore of Jinshan Island to buy tickets, and meet up on the island near the tomb. At this moment, Zhuowen suddenly walked over to Elder Wuxia, and asked in a low voice, "Elder Wuxia, can you tell me the method to enter the inner court? After all, I'm already an unnamed disciple of the inner court." Elder Wuxia glanced at Zhuowen indifferently, and waved his sleeve. Although the inner courtyard is extremely mysterious to outsiders, it's not that mysterious to us. This is a map of the Divine Spectre realm. The method to enter the inner courtyard is marked on it. Zhuowen did not expect Elder Wuxia to agree so readily. He kept the map, cupped his hands, and walked to the side of the deck. The Emperor's tomb could be said to be the center of the entire Sea of Bitterness. In the region of the Emperor's tomb, the sea water was exceptionally black, like ink. It was impossible to see what was in the water. A giant black storm swept through the entire Emperor's tomb sea region. It was about 10 miles wide. Above the black storm, there were countless black clouds. Within the black clouds, there was a mix of purple and blue lightning. Rumble! A purplish-blue thunderbolt streaked across the void from the dark clouds in the sky, illuminating the black storm, and making it look particularly conspicuous and ferocious. It was like an ancient giant beast that was about to devour everything in the world. That's the most famous black storm in the Emperor's tomb. The black storm has the power to devour everything. If a warrior's strength is not enough to enter, he will be devoured by the black storm. Not even his bones will be left. Moyan Wuxiang slowly came to Zhuowen's side. His beautiful eyes stared at the giant black storm in the distance. His eyes were filled with fear. The black storm should be extremely terrifying. Not only did he see fear in Moyan Wuxiang's eyes, even the Dean and Elder Huaxia's faces changed slightly. The black storm can only be said to be the first obstacle in the Emperor's tomb. What's more terrifying is the 9 heavens purple profound lightning that is mixed in the black storm. The 9 heavens purple profound lightning is an extremely terrifying lightning energy that is born from the black storm. It is said that if it hits a mid-level emperor directly, even a high-level emperor will be severely injured. Moyan Wuxiang continued to speak slowly. What? It's that terrifying? Hearing this, Zhuowen's heart trembled. The black storm was already terrifying enough, but the 9 heavens purple profound lightning that was mixed in the black storm was even more terrifying. A mid-level emperor would be blasted to pieces, and even a high-level emperor would be severely injured by the 9 heavens purple profound lightning. If he was unlucky enough to be struck by the 9 heavens purple profound lightning, there would be nothing left of him. Hehe. Zhuowen, you don't have to be so surprised. The 9 heavens purple profound lightning has a difference in strength. Wuxiang is just bluffing. If the 9 heavens purple profound lightning is completely purple, a mid-level emperor might not be able to withstand it. However, if it is a blue 9 heavens purple profound lightning, its power is much weaker. Ordinary low-level emperors can withstand it. The purple profound lightning that is in between the two should be able to threaten low-level emperors, but not mid-level emperors. The dean came to Zhuowen's side unknowingly and explained with a smile. However, his face soon became serious and he said in a deep voice, "However, for you guys, even the weakest 9 heavens purple profound lightning might not be able to withstand it. Therefore, when you enter the black storm, try to be as careful as possible." Zhuowen and Moyan Wuxiang nodded their heads when they heard the dean's serious advice. The dean chatted with Zhuowen and Moyan Wuxiang for a while before he left. Zhuowen came to Jia Nan and Mo Lingtian's side and said in a serious tone, This trip to the Emperor's tomb is extremely dangerous. The four of you have to be careful. When the time comes, follow me closely." The strength of Jianan and the other three had increased quite quickly. Among them, Jianan had reached the peak of the Golden Venerate level, while Mo Lingtian had reached the Heavenly Venerate level. What surprised Zhuowen the most was that Gatha had also reached the Heavenly Venerate level. Her cultivation speed was so fast that it exceeded Zhuowen's expectations. The Heaven's Wrath Armored Soul is indeed powerful. It can actually help Gatha cultivate so quickly. I wonder how much power Gatha can use from the Heaven's Wrath Armored Soul. Zhuowen took a deep look at Gatha and muttered in his heart. Xiaohe had praised Gatha's Heaven's Wrath Armored Soul very much. It was said that if this armored soul could be completely controlled, Gatha would definitely become an expert in the future. As for Jianan, because he had the undying armored soul, his skin was rough and his flesh was thick. Although his cultivation was at the peak of the Golden Venerate level, an ordinary Heavenly Venerate level warrior would find it difficult to deal with him. On the other hand, Xianxing's talent was much worse than Jianan and the other two. She was still only at the sovereign level. Entering the Emperor's tomb with such a cultivation was actually an act of seeking death. Perhaps because she felt Zhuowen's surprised gaze, Xianxing's beautiful eyes flashed and she forced a smile. "This time, I'm only here to take a look at the Emperor's tomb. If it's really too dangerous, I'll just take a look from the periphery. I don't plan to enter the Emperor's tomb." Hearing Xianxing's words, Zhuowen nodded and said, "The Emperor's tomb is indeed too dangerous for you. Ordinary Heavenly Venerates have a high chance of dying in the Emperor's tomb, let alone you." Zhuowen's words were not polite. He knew that if he didn't point out the main point, it would be very difficult to dispel Xianxing's impulsive thoughts. Sure enough, after Zhuowen's words fell, Xianxing lowered her head and nodded, not saying a word. Mo Lingtian chuckled and said, "Xianxing, Zhuowen, he's doing this for your own good. Your cultivation is indeed a little weak. It's not very suitable for you to enter the Emperor's tomb." "I know." Xianxing suddenly smiled and said. Seeing that Xianxing had thought it through, Mo Lingtian and Zhuowen also relaxed. Next, they just had to wait for the sun shuttle to land. There was a rather large island in the periphery of the Black Storm. This island was called Ravengale Island because it was located near the Black Storm. Because the Emperor's tomb was about to open, the Ravengale Island, which was usually cold and cheerless, was now extremely lively. There was an endless stream of people, and it was bustling with activity. The landing of the sun shuttle attracted the attention of countless Ravengale Island cultivators. When they noticed that it was the sun shuttle, fear appeared in their eyes. In the entire Bitter Sea, only one person possessed the sun shuttle. That person was Master Mu Feng of the Excellent Divine Academy. He was the only heavenly arcana master in the entire Bitter Sea. His spiritual cultivation was unfathomable, and he was publicly acknowledged as an existence that couldn't be provoked. Moreover, the Excellent Divine Academy was also one of the 5 strongest islands in the Bitter Sea. Due to Master Mu Feng, it was ranked first among the 5 islands. Regardless of talent, strength, or foundation, it was stronger than the other 4 islands. After walking down the sun shuttle, Master Mu Feng and his group casually chose a large mountain peak and sat cross-legged on it. They silently waited for the Emperor's tomb to appear. After all, there was still half a month before the Emperor's tomb appeared. Thus they weren't in a hurry. Master Mu Feng, Dean Mo Yen, and this should be the famous Inner Academy elder, Wuxia. Azura is fortunate to be able to meet the 3 of you. It's truly a blessing of 3 lifetimes. A rather candid voice resounded. Soon after, a middle-aged man wearing a blood-red robe rushed over with a group of people and landed in front of Master Mu Feng and his group. Standing behind Grandmaster Mu Feng, Zhuowen's gaze landed on the blood-red robed man as a deep smile appeared on his face. This blood-red robed man was not unfamiliar to him. He was actually the Azura Island's island master, Azura Li Di. Back then, Zhuowen had been forced into an extremely miserable state by this fellow. Azura Li Di clearly didn't recognize Zhuowen. After all, when Zhuowen participated in the Azura Island's training, He had used the 100 transformation divine art to change his appearance. Therefore, after shooting a glance at Zhuowen, he started chatting with Master Mufeng, and the other two with a flattering smile. Master Mufeng narrowed his eyes. He was extremely cold towards Azura Lidi's friendly behavior. This caused Azura Lidi to feel awkward. However, he wasn't angry at all. Master Mufeng's position in the Bitter Sea was extremely high. Even the excellent Divine Academy's Outer Academy was polite to him, let alone Azura Lidi. Since Master Mufeng wasn't willing to pay attention to him, Azura Lidi turned his attention to the Dean and started chatting with him. The Dean was originally a nice guy. In addition, Azura Lidi was the island master of Azura Island. Therefore, he naturally wouldn't be as cold and indifferent as Master Mufeng. Azura Lidi, I heard that your son Yamakrown Prince was killed a few months ago. Is that true? Chapter 1230. Black Storm. The arrogant laughter immediately attracted everyone's attention. Soon after, they discovered that another group of people had landed on the mountain peak, where Master Mufeng and the others were. It's the people from the Night Demon Island. It's said that the Night Demon Island and the Azura Island have always been on bad terms. The Night Demon Island's island master must be mocking Azura Lidi on purpose. Many people whispered at the foot of the mountain peak. Their eyes were filled with fear as they looked at the group of people from the Night Demon Island who had just landed on the mountain peak. Night Demon Island? Zhuowen's gaze also fell on the group of people from the Night Demon Island, especially the leader of the group. His aura was extremely powerful, even stronger than Azura Lidi. This person's hair was a sickly green. Between the thick ends of his hair, there were actually small green snakes slithering about. His pair of green eyes emitted a demonic aura. His entire temperament did not resemble that of a human. This person is the Night Demon Island's island master Yi Wuxin. He's a demon emperor. Although he's also a fourth-layer emperor like Azura Lidi, his battle strength is even stronger than Azura Lidi. Yi Wuxin's original body was a sea snake that lived in the Bitter Sea. Later on, he cultivated and became a demon by chance. He obtained an island and named it the Night Demon Island. Later on, it developed and became one of the 5 strongest islands. Moyan Wushang also noticed the astonishment in Zhuowen's eyes. He moved closer to his ear and softly explained. The young man beside Yi Wuxin is Yi Wuxin's son Yi Yuqing. His cultivation is a first-layer demon emperor. Back then, he fought against the Yamakrown Prince and lost to him in one move. That's why the relationship between Yi Wuxin and Azura Lidi isn't good. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded. It seemed that Yi Wuxin and Azura Lidi were old enemies. On the other hand, the young man beside Yi Wuxin, Yi Yuqing, was quite strong. He was even stronger than the Yamakrown Prince. Zhuowen really did not know how the Yamakrown Prince had defeated Yi Yuqing. Perhaps feeling Zhuowen's gaze, Yi Yuqing, who was standing next to Yi Wuxin, slowly turned her head. Her green pupils stared at Zhuowen. An ray of light burst out. Zhuowen, on the other hand, was not afraid at all. Their eyes met, and he did not dodge at all. This made Yi Yuqing quite surprised. Interesting. A mere peak Empyrean actually dares to look me in the eye. Haha. Yi Yuqing chuckled and turned his gaze away naturally. However, he remembered Zhuowen's name. Yi Wuxian. What do you mean? Standing Azura's face was extremely ugly as he stared coldly at Yi Wuxin. Yi Wuxian chuckled and said mockingly, "What's the point? The number 1 genius of your Azura Island, the Yamakrown Prince, was actually killed by a nobody. This is truly a disgrace to your reputation as an Azura." "I am merely stating a fact." Boom! Standing Azura trembled with anger, and a terrifying emperor's aura spread out. He was actually planning to fight back. Yi Wuxin sneered when he sensed Azura's aura. He was not afraid at all, and he also released his own aura, not showing any weakness. "The two of you, that's enough. If you want to fight, don't fight here. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." Master Mufeng slowly opened his eyes, and a trace of cold light spread out. His indifferent voice caused Azura and Yi Wuxin, who were opposing each other, to immediately restrain their auras. Since Master Mufeng has spoken, Wuxin will naturally not act recklessly. I'm just afraid that some people will attack at the slightest provocation. Yi Wuxin said to Master Mufeng with a flattering smile. Azura Lidi's face darkened, but he couldn't do anything in front of Grandmaster Mufeng. He could only coldly snort and leave the mountain peak. The death of the Yama Crown Prince was the deepest pain in his heart. Now that Yi Wuxin had exposed his scar in front of everyone, Azura Lidi didn't have the mood to stay here any longer. Not long after Azura Lidi left, the Sea Heart Island and the Horizon Island also came to visit Grandmaster Mufeng. These two islands were also two of the 5 strongest islands. However, their strength was considered to be on the weaker side of the 5 islands. Therefore, when facing the Night Demon Island, these 2 islands clearly lacked confidence. Apart from the other 4 strongest islands that came to pay a visit to Master Mufeng, many other islands of Bitter Sea also came, wanting to worm their way into being friends with Master Mufeng. However, the strength of these islands was not enough, and they were naturally stopped by the other islands of Excellent Spirit Island, causing them to leave embarrassedly. Let's wait for half a month first, Master Mufeng said indifferently, then closed his eyes. The Dean and Elder Huaxia would naturally not disobey Master Mufeng's words. They knew that the Emperor's tomb would only open in half a month, and waiting for half a month was the most appropriate time to enter. After all, regardless of whether it was the Black Storm or the 9 Heavens Purple Profound Lightning, both of them were extremely terrifying things. It was simply not worth it to take the risk to enter now. Zhuowen silently sat at the back, his eyes flickering. However, he was pondering in his heart. Lu Hantian and the others hoped that they would be able to arrive in half a month. 10 days later, Zhuowen's communication jade talisman was activated. Lu Hantian and the other 4 had finally arrived at Black Wind Island, and Zhuowen found an excuse to leave the mountain peak. With regards to Zhuowen's departure, Master Mufeng and the others did not obstruct him. They only instructed Zhuowen to return before the Emperor's tomb opened. With the passage of 10 days, more and more warriors appeared on the Ravengale Island. Once the number of people increased, disputes would naturally occur. The Ravengale Island had become more chaotic than it was 10 days ago. During this period, countless fights broke out, and many people lost their lives in these fights. In this place, if one did not have sufficient strength, they would be swallowed whole. After all, most of the warriors in Bitter Sea were fugitives. Many fugitives from other regions of the Eastern Land had basically gathered in various islands of Bitter Sea to seek refuge. The atmosphere was extremely ferocious. Due to the chaos around him, Zhuowen naturally could not find peace after leaving the mountain peak. However, after several peak heavenly venerates with bad intentions were blasted to smithereens by Zhuowen, many of the surrounding warriors fell silent. They no longer dared to place their attention on Zhuowen. In a secluded valley on Black Wind Island, the Grand Demon Lord, Lu Hantian, and Lve Tao were gathered here. Zhuowen had found them through their communication jade talismans. Zhuowen, Master, Lu Hantian, and the Grand Demon Lord arrived before Zhuowen first. Zhuowen nodded and said, "The Emperor's tomb will open in 5 days. Prepare yourselves well. Also, I plan to leave my demonic Dao clone with you and enter the Emperor's tomb with another identity." "You're not leaving your demonic Dao clone with you? You should know that your demonic Dao clone should be the strongest of your 3 clones, right?" Lu Hantian asked with a frown. Zhuowen shook his head and smiled. "Don't worry. My main body will follow the upper echelons of Fine God Academy into the Emperor's tomb, so there won't be any danger to my life. On the contrary, it won't be easy to snatch good things from them. I don't plan on exposing my demonic Dao clone, so..." Lu Hantian also understood. If Zhuowen wanted to obtain good things, he needed to rely on his demonic Dao clone. However, he did not want to expose his demonic Dao clone, so he planned on separating his demonic Dao clone from his main body. After exhorting Lu Hantian and the Grand Demon Lord, Zhuowen's main body left the valley. With the Grand Demon Lord and his demonic Dao clone following him, Zhuowen was not worried about the safety of Lu Hantian and the others. After returning to the mountain, Zhuowen waited silently. Finally, 5 days slowly passed. When the 5th day arrived, all the cultivators on Ravengale Island became excited. Their gazes all landed on the huge black storm before them. Rumble! The black storm before them began to tremble violently, as if something was stirring in the center of the storm. At the same time, the black clouds above the storm became even denser and darker, slowly sinking. 9 heavens purple profound lightning constantly wreaked havoc within the black clouds, descending into the black storm. There was no lack of terrifying purple thunderbolts. Like the might of the heavens, they dyed the entire black storm purple. Under the illumination of the demonic purple light, countless warriors on the Ravengale Island saw a terrifying whirlpool being formed at the bottom of the sea at the center of the black storm. Within the whirlpool, an incomparably black building slowly floated up. First, the sharp horn on the top of the building was revealed. Subsequently, the entire structure below was revealed. It was a huge black pyramid. The body of the pyramid was piled up with strange black bricks. A dark presence lingered around the pyramid, making it seem extremely strange. At the same time, the crowd discovered that at the center of the black pyramid, black stone doors had opened. At a glance, there were hundreds and thousands of stone door entrances. Is this the Emperor's tomb? Zhuowen's pupil shrunk as he muttered softly, looking at the black pyramid that was floating on the surface of the sea. The structure of the Emperor's tomb gave him an extremely shocking feeling. Just the structure alone was nearly 10,000 feet in size. In front of the Emperor's tomb, the entire Ravengale Island was like an ant, let alone the countless cultivators gathered in the black storm. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The instant the Emperor's tomb appeared, countless sonic booms resounded. In the sky above Ravengale Island, figures that blotted out the sky and covered the earth whizzed out like locusts, rushing towards the Emperor's tomb at the center of the black storm. Let's set off as well. Master Mufeng slowly stood up. With a wave of his sleeve, terrifying mental energy was like an armor that covered everyone's bodies. Soon after, he led everyone away from Ravengale Island. The gravity in the Sea of Bitterness has disappeared? When Zhuowen left Ravengale Island with Master Mufeng and entered the sky above the Sea of Bitterness where the black storm was, he suddenly discovered that the terrifying gravity emitted from the surface of the Sea of Bitterness had completely disappeared. He knew that it was extremely difficult for cultivators below the Emperor's stage to fly above the Sea of Bitterness. Chapter 1231. Entrance to the Emperor's tomb. Zhuowen nodded his head when he heard this. No wonder this sea region did not have the terrifying gravity from before. It turns out that it had been offset by the buoyancy of the black storm. Rumble! Berserk thunderbolts descended from the black clouds like meteors that streaked across the sky. They were extremely resplendent. Countless figures rushed past Master Mufeng's group like a swarm of locusts. Their eyes were filled with fanaticism. Be careful. The closer we get to the black storm, the more berserk the energy of the 9 heavens purple profound lightning will become. Master Mufeng reminded them in an indifferent manner. His speed was not slow as he continued to advance. The group of people following Master Mufeng nodded their heads with grave expressions. Even without Master Mufeng's reminder, they could sense the increasingly powerful pressure coming from their surroundings. Moreover, a trace of danger rose in their hearts for no reason. Ah, ah, ah. Endless miserable cries suddenly sounded from the front. Countless figures in front of them were torn into a bloody mist by the powerful wind of the black storm the instant they neared. They could not be more dead. You guys overestimate yourselves. Even those below the heavenly venerate level actually dared to barge into the black storm. Evil Moon licked his lips and ridiculed. Just as Evil Moon had said, most of the cultivations of those who died in the black storm were below the heavenly venerate level. They did not even enter the black storm before they were annihilated by the powerful wind outside. Xian Xing, who was originally following beside Zhuowen's group, suddenly became silent. She sighed softly and said, Zhuowen, Ling Tian, Jianan and Gatha, it looks like I'm not suitable for the Emperor's tomb. I'll wait for all of you on Ravengale Island. As she spoke, Xianxing took a step forward and left the group, returning to Ravengale Island. After seeing the tragedy in front of them, Xianxing finally retreated. After all, her cultivation was only at the Supreme Being level. With her cultivation, she would be torn to pieces by the powerful wind before she could reach the interior of the Black Storm. At least you know your own limits. However, is there still a brat in your group who overestimates himself and intends to continue following us? Evil Moon glanced at the departing Xianxing. His evil gaze suddenly landed on Jia Nan as he coldly spoke. Kanan's cultivation was at the peak of the Golden Exalt level, and there was still a gap between him and a Heavenly Exalt. Therefore, what Evil Moon said was not wrong. You don't have to worry about that. What does my overestimation of my ability have to do with you? Jia Nan was a straightforward person, and he replied coldly. How dare you talk to me like this? Evil Moon's pupil shrank slightly. His eyes became colder and colder, and he said in a cold tone. However, after Shiyue finished speaking, he felt an extremely dangerous gaze. He raised his head, and just happened to see Zhuo Wen's cold gaze. His heart trembled, and the words that he wanted to say were forcefully swallowed back into his stomach. Xiaoyu snorted coldly, and did not say anything else. His body moved closer to the 5 great geniuses of the Inner Academy, and began to chat with them. After all, Evil Moon had already advanced to the Emperor realm. Furthermore, he was willing to join their sky capital peak. Therefore, the 5 of them naturally did not reject Evil Moon. In addition, Evil Moon's slightly flattering attitude caused the 5 of them to have a good impression of him. Of course, the 5 of them naturally did not have a good attitude towards Zhuowen. Instead, they were cold and indifferent. With regards to their attitudes, Zhuowen shrugged his shoulders and did not pay too much attention to them. We are about to approach the Black Storm. Pay attention to the 9 heavens purple profound lightning within the Black Storm. Master Mu Feng's voice rang out once again, causing the group behind him to raise their guard. What a powerful tearing force! The instant they approached the Black Storm, Zhuowen's pupil shrank slightly. He felt a terrifying force spread around his body. This force spread in all directions, and it continuously pulled at his limbs and bones, wanting to tear him into pieces. After discovering this point, Zhuowen hurriedly circulated the Yuan power within his body and adhered it to his body, resisting the tearing force that was acting on his body. Zhuowen was not the only one. The others around him had also sensed the frightening tearing force of the Black Storm. One after another, they unleashed their Yuan power defenses on the surface of their bodies. However, Jia Nan was an exception. He did not put up any defenses and directly faced the tearing force of the Black Storm. The thing that caused everyone to be rather surprised was that Jia Nan, who did not have any defensive measures, was actually completely unharmed under the Black Storm. No wonder he dared to follow us in. It turns out that this little fellow is not simple. The dean also noticed Jia Nan's unusual state. He was initially startled, but soon after he softly laughed. Everyone be careful. This Black Storm is mixed with the energy of the 9 heavens purple profound bomb. Therefore, don't get hit by it. Otherwise, your life and death will be up to fate. Master Mu Feng leisurely strolled as his indifferent voice slowly sounded out. Zhuowen silently followed behind. During the process of entering the depths of the Black Storm, he had seen many tragedies. Many practitioners who were not strong enough were torn apart by the energy of the Black Storm midway, due to their insufficient strength. They did not even have the time to let out a miserable shriek. The same scene frequently occurred within the large Black Storm region. The miserable shrieks that were tearing apart were unceasing. Within the black wind, there was a faint unpleasant bloody smell that was faintly emitted, causing the entire Black Storm region to have an additional ferocious color. Of course, although many practitioners had fallen within the Black Storm, there were also quite a few practitioners who successfully passed through the obstruction of the Black Storm and arrived at the center of the Black Storm. We're almost there. Master Mu Feng suddenly took a step forward and walked out of the periphery of the Black Storm, entering the core region. Although the energy in the periphery of the Black Storm was extremely violent, the core region of the storm was much calmer. After Master Mufeng entered, the group of people behind him also entered the core region. Soon after, their gazes fell onto the center of the core region, where the black pyramid quietly floated. Their eyes were filled with fervor. Before them was their target, this time the Emperor's tomb. Legend has it that the Emperor's tomb was built by the strongest expert in the Imperial region, a powerful half-step saint, using his entire life saint force. He had long predicted the fall of the Imperial region. This Emperor's tomb was originally used by the experts of the Imperial region to migrate. However, for some unknown reason, those Emperor realm practitioners who entered the Emperor's tomb all died. Hence, this building was called the Emperor's tomb. Master Mufeng said with his hands behind his back, as he quietly stared at the Emperor's tomb. Did he die for no reason? Baiyu asked curiously. Master Mufeng shook his head and said indifferently, I'm not very clear about what happened in the Imperial region. The fall of the Imperial region, and the formation of the Imperial tomb, only took a single night. No one knows what happened that night. Zhuowen nodded his head as his gaze landed on the tomb. Seemed like this tomb was filled with many mysteries. Whoosh, whoosh, air-piercing sounds rang out, and many warriors surged in from outside the black storm. When these warriors entered the core region, their gazes landed on the Emperor's tomb in the center, and extreme greed appeared in their eyes. Master Mufeng, shouted Yi Wuxian, with a group of people from the Yi Monster Island. He looked at the great Emperor's tomb in front of him and said modestly, There are so many entrances to the great Emperor's tomb. Which one is the real one? Not long after Yi Wuxian arrived, Azura Island, Sea Heart Island, and Horizon Island also gathered in front of Master Mufeng. Although there were hundreds of entrances to the great Emperor's tomb, no one knew which one was the real one, so they didn't dare to take the risk. Not only them, but the surrounding warriors, whose forces did not belong to the 5 strongest islands, also did not act rashly. Obviously, they were also hesitating about which entrance was the most feasible. Master Mufeng licked his lips and said with a smile, The method is very simple. There are 365 stone doors in the great Emperor's tomb. You only need to choose 365 test subjects, and you will know which one is the real one. Yi Wuxian from the Yi Monster Island, Azura Li Di from the Azura Island, Tian Juya from the Horizon Island, and Yang Haixin from the Sea Heart Island felt a chill in their hearts. Even Zhuowen and the others behind Master Mufeng narrowed their eyes. They weren't stupid, so they naturally understood the meaning behind Master Mufeng's words. He wanted to capture 365 people to test the 365 stone doors in the great Emperor's tomb. TSK, the method is very simple, but even if we choose 365 people to enter the stone doors, how will we know which one is the right one? After all, we won't be able to determine the situation inside. Yi Wuxian chuckled. I have my own methods. First, capture 365 test subjects for me. Master Mufeng said indifferently. The eyes of the 4 island masters flickered when they heard Master Mufeng's words. In the end, they still listened to Master Mufeng's idea. They must enter the great Emperor's tomb. Of course, they wouldn't take any risks when it came to the entrance. Therefore, Master Mufeng's idea was the most reliable. After all, there were only 365 people. This time, there would be tens of thousands of warriors entering the core area. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. When they thought of this, the 4 island masters led the experts under their forces and rushed towards the warriors who were still watching. Soon, the surrounding warriors were in an uproar. They didn't expect that the 4 island masters would suddenly make a move. Of course, most of the people chosen by the 4 island masters were rogue cultivators, who didn't belong to any sects or clans or warriors from extremely weak island forces. Therefore, although the actions of the 4 island masters caused dissatisfaction among the surrounding warriors, it didn't cause too much of a backlash. After a while, the 4 island masters captured 365 weaker warriors. Most of them were at the initial stage of the Heavenly Venerable Realm. There were a few at the intermediate stage of the Heavenly Venerable Realm. These warriors were all glaring angrily at the 4 island masters and constantly cursing. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.